Minauros is the third layer of the 9 hells of Baator, under the rule of the archdevil Mammon. Known as the Endless Bog, it serves as the economic hub of the 9 hells, where fresh souls are processed and coined. Despite its immense wealth, the layer has a dilapidated appearance, and its residents are miserable. The plain itself is an immense, foul-smelling swamp, a putrid expanse of marshland and despair stretching beyond imagination. It is arguably the most diseased among the lower plains, a dismal wasteland, a putrefying soil, and layers of contaminated water where the harmful effects of poison and sickness are amplified and recovery is hindered. The surface of the bog is littered with corpses and decaying flesh, emitting a noxious stench and posing a constant hazard to travelers who may stumble upon the sharp bones or risk drowning in the filthy waters. The majority of Minauros is characterized by a bleak environment, a realm in a perpetual state of decay on the brink of collapse. The structures scattered across the plain require constant repair, maintenance, and replacement, constructed from flimsy materials and employing subpar craftsmanship. While there exist cities crafted from intricately carved stone, their grandeur is marred by gradual deterioration. Nearly everything constructed in Minauros is left to decay, gradually sinking into the abyssal mud, ultimately consumed by the plain's gaping sinkhole. Valuable treasures, whether magical or notable, are destined for destruction or plunder, as nothing of worth remains in the bog for long. The surface is a grim sight, covered in thick layers of foul scum and punctuated by patches of mud flats and stagnant pools. The putrid waters emit a variety of unpleasant odors and are occasionally illuminated by faint yellow-green swamp gas, casting an eerie glow in the foggy, mist-covered atmosphere. Some areas are heated from below, causing waters to boil and create mud geysers, while others are so cold that they freeze over. Beneath the sluggish mud lie deep pits, adding to the hazards the travelers must navigate with caution through the unpleasant swamp. As one ventures deeper into the plain, the marshes gradually transition into barren expanses dotted with lifeless, ash-covered trees and volcanic formations, where obsidian and igneous rocks snake across the landscape like frozen serpents. Approaching the center of the plain, these formations give way to a vast and tortured volcanic wasteland of ash-covered hills and slime-filled crevices. The perpetually gloomy skies of Minauros vary in shades from brown to leaden, churning with heavy, drooping clouds ranging from slate gray to putrid indigo. Harsh and cold winds often buffet the surface. The weather is not merely a natural phenomena, but rather a meticulously regulated aspect of the lawful plain, and the relentless rains of Minauros adhere to the pattern. Acid rain incessantly pelts the ground, a noxious barrage with an oily, rusty, and pungent quality, creating a cacophony akin to hundreds of drums being beaten. This is typically followed by a sleet, which coats travelers in an icy layer that slowly transforms into an irremovable oily residue. Frequent and sudden hailstorms descend upon the landscape, comprised of polluted ice and often laced with hooks, metal shards, and the sharp teeth of long-deceased devils. These atmospheric shifts occur in cycles, with hailstorms occurring roughly every 5 minutes and lasting anywhere from a few seconds to a couple of minutes. The bitter winds accompanying these storms make flying highly perilous. For those caught outside without shelter, seeking refuge behind ridges provides little protection. By decree of Asmodeus, planar portals cannot directly link to any layer of hell except Avernus. This means generally, to reach Minauros, one would have to first travel to the layer above it, Dis, and find a portal, and similarly, another portal would be needed to reach Phlegethos below. Portals exist from the city of Dis to the sinking city and Jangling Hiter, as well as from the sinking city to the lower city of Abramoke in Phlegethos. Alternatively, one could access Phlegethos from the lowest points of Minauros through constant dribbles of slimy water that cascade into long and often fatal falls. Additional methods of reaching Minauros without traversing through the other layers also exist. Branches and waterfalls of the river Styx can be found on every layer of hell, and a landing of the infinite staircase is rumored to lead somewhere within Jangling Hiter. Often dubbed the City of Chains or Torture City, the infernal metropolis of Jangling Hiter is ruled by chain devils, also known as Kytons, and boasts a reputation for unyielding cruelty and madness. While not as vast as the colossal sinking city of Minauros, it stands as the primary urban center of the plain, showcasing the dominance of its devilish inhabitants. Life in Jangling Hiter is characterized by distinct sensations: the discomfort of rusty, slimy chains against the skin, and the olfactory assault of decaying, oily metal in tight and dizzying spaces. The relentless cacophony of clinking metal and dripping, corroded water drives away all but the most deranged, while agonizing screams of the tortured souls pervade the city incessantly. The collective moans and cries often crescendo to such a chilling intensity that even the most composed or unaccustomed struggle to suppress visceral reactions such as horrified screams or feelings of pity. In contrast to the sinking fate of many cities in Minauros, Jangling Hiter defies this norm with a peculiar solution to the layer's unstable foundations. The city of chains hangs suspended by an intricate web of thick, unimaginably long, slimy, and blade-enhanced chains anchored to posts scattered throughout the urban sprawl. Through this method, the lower reaches of Hiter barely graze the roiling swamp below. It resembles a metallic jungle where every structure, from streets to buildings to cellars to makeshift shelters, consists entirely of chains. These chains are encrusted with algae, filth, and often bristle with barbs or blades, rendering them difficult to grasp and nearly impossible to scale. The perpetual winds and movements of its denizens keep the chains of Jangling Hiter in constant motion, particularly noticeable at the periphery and atop the structures, less so towards the center. However, this environment offers little respite from Minauros' relentless rain and lethal sleet, which can penetrate even the most fortified interiors. Consequently, most residents seek shelter beneath dense clusters of chains, with the most dense structures in the bustling, noisy heart of the city. Within the depths of Jangling Hiter, sinister beings known as Hell Chain Weavers lurk. These sadistic and cunning monstrous spiders evoke fear even among the Kytons, weaving rusted webs that infest the city's darkest recesses. The mechanism by which the chains of Jangling Hiter are anchored or sustained remains a baffling enigma. Despite widespread speculation, residents display remarkable apathy towards uncovering the truth, perhaps fearing to reveal themselves as outsiders and potential prey. A prevailing theory suggests that these chains somehow breach the boundaries between planar layers, connecting to Dis on the other side. Attempts to ascend the supporting chains yield a peculiar phenomenon. Beyond a certain height, climbers cease to make progress. Despite the appearance of continued descent, both to themselves and observers, they inevitably find themselves descending once more. While the city acknowledges the rulership of the Archduke, it predominantly operates autonomously. Kytons, for the most part, regard each other as equals, sparing little concern for hierarchical disputes and occasionally squabbling over the spoils of their victims. Fear paralyzes the populace, preventing any deviation from obedience, although within this den of depravity, the potential for violence always looms. Kytons navigate the city with apparent ease, appearing wherever their presence is required, functioning as both law enforcement and an underworld syndicate. They quietly oversee the city's affairs, collecting extortion payments and favors under the guise of protection. In Jangling Hiter, the only forbidden activities are theft, murder, and acts that generate chaos. While the latter is deemed criminal due to its inherent danger, theft and murder are prohibited solely because Kytons consider them their exclusive prerogatives. All transgressions are swiftly met with the same harsh punishment: immediate, merciless death, either by chains or the sheer terror of being hunted. There exists no system of appeals or legal code. Each Kyton serves as judge, jury, and executioner in the moment. Although the Kytons of the City of Chains often defer to a particularly cunning fellow known as Kemoth, he holds no official authority. The earliest recorded ruler, the Hamatula Polis Windscreamer, demonstrated little interest in governance, preferring to patrol Minauros. Rumors suggest he served merely as a figurehead, assigned to maintain order as punishment rather than promotion. Later, a pit fiend assumed leadership, but subsequently was petrified by Mammon as punishment for failing to meet soul quotas. Queen Sigirsa, a former Paeliryon turned archdevil and purported paramour of Mammon, eventually assumed control of the city. Under Polis's rule, trade within Jangling Hiter experienced a downturn, with only the desperate or foolhardy venturing into its confines willingly. This decline was intentional, engineered to push Kytons towards extreme measures, including immigration across the Outer Plains, much to his satisfaction. However, the city has maintained a foothold in the economic landscape due to its renowned production of chains of unparalleled quality, Whether mundane or magical, slender or robust, composed of metal or alternative materials, Jangling Hiter's offerings include ornate gossamer draperies, formidable anchor bonds, exquisite chainmail, and virtually indestructible manacles, alongside a trove of esoteric knowledge. Yet the city's most valuable commodity remains its supply of damned souls. Daily, souls from across the multiverse are ushered into Jangling Hiter's expansive, factory-like facilities for excruciating torment. Once processed, they are typically transported to the sinking city for transformation into lemurs. The transportation of souls is another key industry for the city. While the Hells boast an array of tortures, none match the merciless and creative agonies inflicted within Jangling Hiter. The Kytons' renowned skill in flaying souls has earned the city such infamy that even archdevils like Levistus and Asmodeus delegate much of their torment-related tasks to its operations. The city boasts defensive structures in name only, as they serve primarily as symbolic gestures. Its imposing stone walls lack guards, and features a sizable breach through which foul waste is disposed. The large metal gate of the city rattles incessantly in the wind. As the predominant and indigenous inhabitants, chain devils constitute the core population of the city, serving as both the enforcers of its ruthless police force and the laborers in its soul-harvesting enterprises. Rumors abound regarding the existence of additional Kytons, hidden deep within the city or scattered elsewhere, surpassing common knowledge. Lesser Kytons engage in obscure endeavors, while more mature counterparts undertake patrol duties. Chain devils, also known as Kytons, engage in sadistic acts of torture upon the souls of mortals. They wear chains not only as attire, but also as implements of both brutal lashings and combat. These chains tightly enshroud the devils, rattling with each movement and writhing around them as if alive. Instead of conventional clothing, the chains encase where their eyes, ears, nose, and hair would be, leaving only their throats, grinning mouths, and occasional glimpses of glinting eyes visible. The spiked shackles adorning their forms are adorned with barbs and scraps of iron, each ending in a hook, blade, or hefty ball. With the combined weight of their chains, Kytons are quite heavy for their size. Cruel and sadistic, chain devils derive immense pleasure from causing suffering. Their affinity for torture makes them willing collaborators for any entity that permits them to indulge in their brutality. Kytons delight in the fear instilled in their victims to such an extent that they meticulously devise methods to evoke dread, whether it's through direct pursuit, skulking in the shadows, or stalking their prey for extended periods. They hunt with methods that evoke the most terror in their targets, barely containing their joy as they do so. They animate the chains adorning their bodies, using them to rend and restrain their victims. Ordinarily, they can manipulate only their own chains, but through a ritual known as the Gift of Chains, they gain the ability to control chains not attached to their forms. This ritual enables them to animate up to 4 nearby chains, causing them to rattle, dance, extend, or sprout jagged spikes. Additionally, the animated chains enhance a Kyton's mobility, allowing them to move and climb with ease. If multiple chain devils attempt to control the same chain, it remains immobile until one Kyton establishes dominance. Although animated chains can restrain and attack opponents independently, they are susceptible to breakage and revert to their inert state after sustaining sufficient damage, or if the chain devil that animated it becomes incapacitated. They possess the uncanny ability to mimic the faces of deceased individuals known to those who behold them, whether cherished loved ones or despised enemies. Though only the lower portion, their face, is typically visual, it often suffices for victims to envision the intended countenance. Through this unsettling skill, chain devils instill temporary terror or shock in their prey. They exhibit continual regeneration. They readily regrow lost limbs, sometimes simply reattaching them. Cold and weakly enchanted weapons fail to harm them. Only silver weapons, or those imbued with potent enchantments, can inflict damage. However, weapons blessed with divine power can impede their regenerative capabilities for some time. After stalking their adversaries, chain devils seek to capture them alive for prolonged torture. In serious combat, they move frenetically across the battlefield, wielding their weapons with abandon and deftly evading attacks. They resort to using the Gift of Chains only when severely pressed or to instill fear in their targets. In the face of blessed weapons, they usually retreat. They serve as the guardians and tormentors of Baator, tasked with inflicting anguish upon the souls condemned to the 9 hells. Alongside other devils specialized in pain, they form relentless teams of torturers, systematically draining both hope and magical energy from mortal souls. Their primary adversaries are the Excruciarchs, another breed of torturer devil. These two factions engage in bitter schemes to undermine each other. Devils proficient in the art of torture not only inflict physical pain, but also extract secrets, incarcerating their adversaries and mastering the techniques of corruption through meticulous analysis. Those who achieve mastery in pain infliction while maintaining a unique approach can ascend to the rank of harvester devils. Although Red Abishai have the potential to become chain devils, most choose to remain in the service of Tiamat. Whether it's flesh, spirit, or agony itself, the true sustenance of a Kyton is still a mystery. This ambiguity arises from the fact that captured Kytons possess the ability to will themselves to perish, causing their bodies to dissolve, leaving behind only chains slick with grease and a pool of noxious ichor. One prominent chain devil is Princeps Kobik, who emerged in the 15th century as a warlord in Avarice. Despite his particularly cruel nature, Kobik proved to be a capable leader, earning the trust of his subordinates. He rides atop an infernal war machine known as the Devil's Ride. He formerly led the 8th Infantry Legion of the 9 Hells, dubbed Terror Incarnate. However, following a devastating defeat against the demon lord Koschitche along the Styx's banks, Kobik placed blame on his superiors. He then rallied the surviving members of the 8th Legion and denounced the infernal hierarchy, establishing the Marauder gang named the 8th Remnant. Kobik's primary objective is to amass sufficient military might to permanently expel the demons from Avarice. Many disaffected devils share sympathy for his cause, prompting them to join the ranks of the 8th Remnant. Despite the menacing presence of the Kytons, non-Kyton residents endeavor to maintain a semblance of normalcy within Jangling Hiter. Nevertheless, the city's population has experienced a gradual decline, earning infamy even among the infernal regions of the 9 Hells for its perilous environment. At one point, the populace had dwindled to a mere few thousand inhabitants, with the Kytons driving away more residents each month. In addition to chain devils, the majority of Jangling Hiter's populace is Baatezu, Night Hags, and Yugoloths. Even Baatezu feel unease when traversing certain areas alone within the City of Chains, as they may vanish amidst the labyrinthine back streets. All this despite the Kytons outwardly refraining from overt threats and ostensibly acknowledging their status as Baatezu subordinates. Barbazus dutifully carry out orders, while imps either deliver messages or congregate in groups, seeking mischief in the city. The presence of pain devils, the chief rivals of chain devils in the realm of torture, is distinctly unwelcome in Jangling Hiter, although Kokrakons, who focus on different types of victims, conduct their affairs without interference. Lemurs and Nuparibos also wander the city, either as part of a retinue or aimlessly, permitted to act as they please. Their profound lack of intelligence renders them easy to avoid, yet they instinctively attack perceived threats. Some devils find amusement in the inability of others to telepathically dissuade them, sometimes feigning ownership and threatening legal action for property damage if they are slain, though those who are already tolerated are never begrudged by the necessity of their demise. Among the residents are petitioners and planers, including humans and humanoids such as goblins, orcs, and half-orcs. Tieflings seek acceptance of their infernal heritage within Jangling Hiter, often enduring abuse that fosters cruelty and a desire for diabolic favor. Despite the prevailing wickedness, there are individuals of decent moral character who walk its streets, driven by necessity or seeking opportunity amidst the city's malevolent atmosphere. The city is segmented into several wards, known as districts or quarters. The Merchants District is considered the most desirable quarter. It offers relative safety from the city's horrors, where outsiders can band together. Merchants bring valuable goods and are granted bills of safe passage, sponsored by influential devil trade partners. However, the protection of even a powerful fiend is not always reliable, as the motions are frequent in Minauros, leaving traders vulnerable. Consequently, merchants often employ expandable entourages to divert attention from themselves. The Fiends District, also referred to as the Baatezu District, comprises most of the city and is the most unwelcoming to outsiders. Baator, who are typically discreet, may become emboldened to attack upon encountering lone mortals, particularly in this quarter. A popular activity among residents is to taunt and mock foolish newcomers who attempt to scale the chains. The visitors' district, known as the abattoir or the meat quarter, welcomes those who arrive in Jangling Hiter without bills of passage, though most who seek refuge from the Kytons end up here before meeting their demise. The sluice, a broad avenue leading into the city, traverses the center of the district. Troughs in the street slope upward toward the city center, facilitating the drainage of spilled blood from the devils feasting on vulnerable mortals. The Kytons district is avoided by non-Kytons. The desolate streets are unnerving, and they risk immediate attack by solitary chain devils patrolling the area. Only entities of unmistakable power, those whom the Kytons prefer not to confront, dare to traverse the streets. A large statue of Sigirsa is known to exist within the city. The statue stands with cupped hands, where offerings are left by superstitious minor devils who hope for advancement. There is also a massive statue of the pit fiend ruler preceding Sigirsa, constructed from his petrified and enlarged remains by Mammon as a reminder of his failure. On the anniversary of his downfall, the statue weeps tears of smoking bile. The origins of the city of Jangling Hiter remain shrouded in mystery, with rumors suggesting that the Kytons played a role in its creation countless ages ago. In the past, the city boasted 10 unofficial Kyton rulers, distinguished chain devils apprenticed by powerful Baator. However, as the city fell into decline, envy and suspicion among them sparked acts of murder and betrayal, ultimately leaving only Kemoth in power. Minauros, alternatively known as Minauros City, often goes by its nickname, the Sinking City. It serves as the capital and focal point of the third layer of the Nine Hells, which takes its name from the sprawling urban center. Mammon, the archdevil, reigns over the vast metropolis, which steadily sinks into the otherworldly bog that characterizes the layer. Shrouded in vegetation and filth, the sinking city, akin to numerous urban centers in the third layer of hell, boasts intricately carved stone structures fashioned into a colossal architectural style. Despite its apparent enormity, the city does not encompass the entirety of the layer, but still comprises a vast expanse of land equivalent to several continents. Despite its enduring existence, the sinking city of Minauros continually descends into the putrid depths of the swamp, its stony foundations gradually succumbing to the shifting mire. Only the perpetual toil of a constant stream of slaves and supplicants stave off its ultimate demise, though with each passing year, a small parcel of ground is swallowed by the cold mud. Structures tremble incessantly, sometimes vanishing entirely into the sludge or collapsing, claiming the lives of inhabitants. Inky ooze creeps between what semblance of roads exist, rendering streets impassable for wheeled vehicles, and the massive stones submerged in the swamp demand constant replacement as they gradually sink. The situation is exacerbated by a flesh-searing hail that sporadically assails the city's denizens and the wider plain, inflicting pain upon the devils. To mitigate this, the city's builders erect colossal stone canopies over its thoroughfares and alleyways, yet even this meager respite and protection carries risks. The columns supporting these decrepit shelters do so precariously and heighten the peril of falling debris. Meanwhile, fallen bricks are repurposed for the city's numerous reclamation endeavors, primarily shoring up the sinking foundations. The sinking of Minauros poses a grave concern to the devils, who appear to be powerless to halt its descent. While such a plight might seem distant and inconsequential to mortals, to the Baator it looms as an imminent and encroaching calamity. The mere millennia it would take to transpire constitutes soon in their scale of time, so teams tirelessly scour the layer for salvageable stone, with low-ranking devils seizing materials as swiftly as they become available, sometimes leading to violent conflicts between rival crews. Eventually, a solution did emerge, sending petitioners to retrieve stone from distant ridges, albeit this only prolongs the inevitable. With the depletion of nearby resources over eons, valuable devils are tasked with overseeing petitioners as they venture further afield for materials. Petitioners and captured intruders are confined together in makeshift cells just beyond the city's limits. These cells consist of pits, where captives stand shackled to stone pillars with iron or brass chains. Prisoners endure torment amidst the cold filth until they drown, escape, or taken for interrogation or labor. Despite amassing a vast and diverse treasury over eons, Mammon, the city and layer's lord, shows little regard for his possessions, including the state of his realm. He focuses solely on acquiring more, allocating only a fraction of his immense wealth to the city's maintenance. Rumors suggest Mammon possesses the capability to save his city, but he is unwilling to expend the necessary power and wealth. Consequently, while technically in charge, much of Minauros' true administrative and diplomatic authority rests with his seneschal, Paeliryon. The principal industry in the sinking city is the soul trade, a domain overseen by Mammon himself. He directs his resources primarily towards maintaining the functionality of the marketplace, allocating funds only as necessary. The city thrives with economic activity, characterized by the constant influx and departure of trade caravans, fervent merchant negotiations, and interplanar fiends engaging in soul transactions. At the heart of the city's commerce lies the sale of soul futures, a practice akin to spiritual loaning. In exchange for goods, services, information, or even a handful of already condemned souls, desperate devils pledge to repay with a greater number of souls in the future. Enforcer squads, capable of instilling fear even in higher-ranking devils, ensure compliance from those who fail to fulfill their obligations. Additionally, the city's soul traders engage in a secondary market, buying and selling existing souls. They may exchange a potentially more valuable spirit for numerous average souls or treasure to fund various operations or procure equipment. Notably, souls of the living, or those who are not of lawful evil alignment, are also subject to trade, as they hold potential leverage against their loved ones. Along the shores of the river Styx, or navigating aboard securely sealed vessels, roaming bands of soul merchants scour the waters, seeking to harvest newly created devils, whether they manifest immediately as lemurs or initially as soul shells. Once their rightful infernal master is determined, whether through negotiation, violence, or theft, the soul is transported to the designated location for torment. However, the Kytons of Jangling Hiter exhibit such proficiency in their craft that much of this labor is outsourced to the City of Chains. Once stripped entirely of their humanity and individuality, the souls are transported to the sinking city for transformation into lemurs. Whether instantly reincarnated as lemurs or subjected to torture beforehand, souls eventually find their way to the sinking city. There, they are documented and allocated according to the applicable contracts, laws, and other specifications. Occasionally, the process encounters disruptions when a group of shells manages to break free, inciting a frenzy among nearby devils eager to secure merit points for their recapture. In instances where no rightful claimant to the soul can be determined, any surplus lemurs are appropriated and sold for profit by Mammon himself. Minauros' slippery ramparts rise high into the air, encircling Mammon's palace within. Notably, while each layer of hell, including Nessus, must contribute forces to the blood war, the rock-gathering patrols of Minauros divert enough troops that the layer's contributions are significantly reduced in number. In addition to his various responsibilities, Paeliryon bears the duty of safeguarding Mammon's treasure hoard, which takes precedence above all else. He has access to the palace purse, a modest fund allocated for discretionary spending towards both the defense and comfort of the residents. Moreover, Paeliryon is largely the driving force behind Minauros' security. Any threats that evade capture or elimination are handled by him, though Mammon relies on the battle power and military expertise of the archdevil Baal to safeguard his holdings from assault. Galbaup, often referred to as Mammon's house or simply left unnamed, serves as a sepulchre and abode of Mammon, a grandiose palace adorned with gold and gemstones constructed to accommodate his immense stature. Carved from black stone sourced from another plane, possibly the prime material, it stands distinct from the layers of his subordinate dukes, positioned at the heart of both the city and the plain of Minauros. The House of Mammon is rumored to be erected upon the remains of numerous deceased beings, its structure precariously supported by towering pillars that, like the rest of the city, continually sink into the marshy abyss below, yet somehow manage to avert complete collapse. Within the submerged halls of Galba lies Mammon's extensive hoard, comprising treasures amassed from those who failed to outwit him in bargains. The fortress houses a plethora of valuable yet garish and tasteless riches, zealously guarded by legions of lesser devils at the behest of the King of Greed. Before ascending to the Dark Eight, the pit fiend Zimimar was tasked with overseeing the palace guard, consisting of 6 Ossiluth companies. When not engaged elsewhere, Zimimar would be stationed at Galbach. A portal to Dis, the layer of hell above Minauros, can be found just above Mammon's palace. In Minauros, lemurs roam freely through the streets, mindlessly approaching any movement and instinctively attacking. Devils can easily repel them with a telepathic command, finding it amusing when newcomers struggle to do the same, often mocking their ineptitude. They may extend their amusement by attempting to extort those who dispatch the creatures, claiming ownership and threatening to sue for property damage. However, there is no resentment towards those who must defend themselves against attacking lemurs. Hamatulas are abundant in Minauros, tasked with maintaining order in the lair. They hunt down escapees, oversee captives, and transport them as required. Barbazu devils transport souls, occasionally pausing to rest on benches, while corpulent Amnesu congregate in cafes, indulging in flagons of noxious liquids as they negotiate soul futures. Minauros has been steadily sinking for as long as mortal recollection extends. Mammon has plundered extensive swaths of his realm to erect the sinking city. The initial city succumbed to the depths long ago, with subsequent structures constructed hastily upon the ruins below. Speculation suggests that the submerged ruins may have originated from a town in the outlands, drawn into the plain of Minauros in millennia past, with rumors circulating of untold riches hidden within. However, no individual, or at least none who have relayed their findings, has succeeded in delving deep enough in the mire to ascertain the truth of this rumor. Mammon very likely holds the title of the wealthiest being in the entire multiverse. Both literally and figuratively double-faced, Mammon, the Archdevil Viscount, embodies a greedy miser whose sole allegiance lies with wealth. Traditionally, he takes on an infernal form, standing tall, resembling a corpulent pit fiend with red gold scaly skin and wings gleaming like rubies. While he retains the ability to revert to this form, Mammon's natural appearance has evolved to resemble certain Yuan-Ti half-bloods. His lower body resembles that of a massive, mottled serpent, while his upper torso is a muscular humanoid form adorned with bony spines along his shoulders and arms. His horned, hairless head appears disproportionately large, with some accounts describing his eyes as yellow and slit-like, akin to a snake, while others claim they are pale and pupilless, yet keenly perceptive. Beneath his eyes lie ominous black lips, concealing pointed teeth, twin serpentine fangs, and a forked tongue that contributes to his hissing, whispering voice. He epitomizes selfishness, embodying insatiable greed and a relentless pursuit of one's desires. He is a merciless predator, relentlessly chasing after his prey, yet once obtained, he swiftly loses interests and shifts his focus to new targets. While his lust for wealth knows no bounds, his materialistic nature dictates that he measures everything in terms of monetary value. He engages in deals solely for profit, showing little concern for the outcomes. In addition to his avarice, Mammon is consumed by megalomania, constantly seeking more power and scheming to attain it. He is indifferent to the methods employed to achieve his goals, willing to commit any act he deems necessary. Opportunistic and deceitful, he lures his victims with silver-tongued promises before reveling in their betrayal. His speech, much like his schemes, is convoluted, filled with cryptic messages and ambiguous requests, often meandering even when issuing orders. Mammon is cunning, surviving by gathering intelligence on his enemies and using it to undermine their expectations. Shamelessly, he maintains his position through flattery, conniving, and obsequiousness, which some might find embarrassing. His groveling before his master Asmodeus is as well known as his arrogant condescension towards his inferiors. He adeptly navigates the complexities of hell, knowing when to fight and when to retreat. Among his array of flaws is his heightened paranoia, which compels him to desperately seek loyal servants, often in foolish and craven ways. When faced with frustration, such as perceived wasted time, his typical response is to lash out by punishing the offender or tormenting unrelated parties. Coupled with his petty, hypersensitive nature and excessive hedonism, Mammon becomes exceedingly difficult to collaborate with. Regardless of one's competence, it is impossible to maintain favor with Mammon, as he lacks any semblance of loyalty or goodwill. He possesses a range of spell-like abilities, such as Fool's Gold and teleportation, along with other powers enabling him to enchant and confuse his adversaries. He is a cautious combatant, relishing in the manipulation of his victims by magically deceiving them into perceiving him as an ally before abruptly turning on them. With a mere touch, he can sever bonds between individuals, whether formal, friendly, or familial, inciting them to turn against each other, or in fits of greed, potentially even targeting Mammon himself. Once a day, he can manifest a symbol of hopelessness and utter an unholy word, emanating an aura of fear and instilling terror with his gaze. In addition to summoning formidable Batezu like pit fiends, Gelagons, and Cornigons, Mammon is known to call upon Barbazus, Amatulas, and Ocelus, as well as green Abishai. He can effortlessly revert to his former pit fiend form, enhancing his speed in combat at the expense of abilities unique to his serpentine shape. Despite his cunning nature, he can also display brute strength, overpowering and constricting his adversaries. Once immobilized, he can deliver a potent venom through his fangs, causing rapid and incurable sickness akin to mummy rot, which can only be cured by a heal spell. Mammon's private treasury holds an extensive assortment of both renowned and obscure riches, consisting of highly valuable, albeit bland treasures, none of which ever depart from the vaults. Among his possessions are several enchanted spears, including a fauchard fork serving as a sword of wounding, and another identified as an unholy iron short spear. Mammon seldom ventures beyond the confines of the sinking city, preferring to govern his realm from a fixed location, although his actual supervision over the domain is minimal. Instead, he dedicates the majority of his time to scheming beneath the corrupted depths, concocting new, nefarious plots. Unlike his peers who vie for the crown of Asmodeus through treacherous Batezu politics, Mammon focuses solely on enriching himself, eschewing such political maneuvers. He spares no moment for sleep, relentlessly pursuing his money-making schemes to augment his already substantial wealth. His primary method of exerting influence is through his immense riches. He offers financial loans and hires mercenaries to repel demonic incursions, expecting a share of the invaders' plunder in return. Along the sluggish currents of the river Styx and Minauros, Mammon's soul collectors await, seizing lemurs and redistributing them based on contracts and laws. Unlike most archdevils who deal in souls, Mammon trades primarily in gold, appropriating surplus petitioners to be sold for profit. He and his greater devils fashion soul coins from the spirits of evil mortals, which are then distributed throughout the 9 hells. Crafted from a unique form of metal called infernal iron, soul coins are sizable. Both faces of the coin bear script in infernal. Each soul coin houses the essence of a solitary being, their soul racked with torment and despair. Consequently, individuals aligned with good can only manage a limited number of these coins, while those of an evil disposition can hoard as many as they desire. A creature possessing a soul coin can tap into its inherent abilities. These include the capacity to siphon the life force from a target creature, and the ability to establish telepathic communication with the imprisoned soul. Although the soul within the coin can respond to inquiries, its answers tend to be ambiguous. Liberating a soul trapped within a soul coin is feasible through the casting of an anti-curse spell, such as Remove Curse, upon the coin. Upon liberation, the coin corrodes and eventually disintegrates. Souls of good alignment are transported to the realm of their deity, whereas souls of evil alignments are sent to Styx and undergo transformation into lemurs. Larvae, also known as soul larvae, are a type of malevolent petitioner that inhabitants of the lower planes consume and trade. They serve as the primary source of income for Night Hags and possess various infernal uses. They vary in size and have a yellow worm-like appearance, with bodies that seem simultaneously sickly and corpulent. They exude a malodorous, viscous slime as they move, leaving a trail akin to that of a slug, accompanied by a sound reminiscent of a retching dog. Their physical form is almost fluid, with a repugnant scent that lingers indefinitely. Instead of a typical worm's head, soul larvae bear a grotesquely deformed visage reminiscent of their former mortal selves. Despite their frailty, the fangs of a soul larva pose a significant threat, causing severe bleeding in those they bite. Moreover, they carry a lethal degenerative disease that can lead to agonizing skin decay in their victims. After 3 weeks of infection, individuals must remain completely immobile to mitigate further health risks, yet death inevitably ensues within a month, with cure disease magic being the only effective remedy. Only under the coercion of a more powerful entity do larvae from the Grey Wastes swarm to their designated adversaries. Otherwise, they typically refrain from bothering others, even in the presence of mortals. However, in densely packed clusters, individuals may find themselves submerged in a writhing mass of larvae, an experience that often proves deeply traumatizing. Soul larvae do not possess any form of societal structure or cultural identity of their own. To most beings, they are merely frightening tales used to instill fear in children. However, within the lower planes, they hold immense significance. They represent the epitome of untapped evil potential, serving a multitude of purposes across the evil-aligned planes. Economically, they function as a basic form of currency for various entities, such as Night Hags, evil deities, liches, devils, daemons, and demons. Although their value in the abyss is approximately 1,000 gold, denizens of this realm seldom engage in material transactions. Soul larvae can be utilized as sustenance, particularly for entities reliant on life forces for survival, like liches, or as fundamental soul stuff for dark rituals requiring esoteric components. Crucially, soul larvae serve as a foundational resource for numerous populations within the lower planes. Given the staggering losses endured daily in the Blood War and the continual rise in fiendish casualties, these creatures are invaluable for replenishing armies. Acting as the blank slates of the lower planes, soul larvae can be transformed into new fiends by devils and demons as required. While some view all larvae as equally pitiful and therefore select them randomly, others are more discerning in their choices. Once transformed, larvae have the potential to ascend to the upper echelons of their respective societies, though the number that achieves such heights is remarkably low, let alone those who become true fiends at all. It is purported that larvae displaying exceptional promise may bypass the mindless caste of demon and devil society and immediately attain a higher status. Larvae serve as the primary, if not the sole means of creating quasits and imps, entities tasked with harvesting souls from mortals to further bolster fiendish populations, thus facilitating their own advancement and rendering them indispensable to the ecology of the lower planes. The abyss harbors the weakest mortal forms, namely soul larvae, who barely eke out survival in its perpetually hostile terrain. Over ages of conflict in the Blood War, demons have mastered the art of diverting most soul larvae to the woeful Escarand, where the Nalfeshnes, known as the Lords of Woe, oversee their promotion according to their whims. Despite their claims of discerning judgment, their chaotic system often borders on farce, as certain Nalfeshnes intentionally promote weak larvae, take actions to embarrass their Baelor superiors. In contrast to the erratic decisions of demons, devils adhere to a harsh and steadfast process of natural selection, devoid of favoritism or subjectivity. Only the finest larvae of Baator, roughly one in every few thousand, are crafted into the shapeless lemurs. Unfit soul larvae are repurposed for various other tasks or undergo transformation into gaunt reflections of their former selves after being traded in markets. The trade in larvae predominantly thrives in Hades, primarily because the souls there exhibit a balanced acceptance of both law and chaos, enabling the hags to engage with both factions on equal terms. Larvae from Baator proves challenging to work with due to their rigid adherence to a specific form of order, often resisting adaptation to the Baatezu's version of lawful evil. Conversely, abyssal larvae are equally problematic, but for contrasting reasons. Their inherent instability and susceptibility often leads them to revert to their larval state and assimilate back into the abyss. Despite both sides' reluctance to acknowledge it openly, with the Baatezu abhorring their dependency on soul larvae and the Tanari merely participating to counter the Baatezu, sourcing larvae of superior evil quality from Hades ultimately facilitates profitability for the Night Hags. Night Hags have long dominated the trade, mastering the art of swiftly assessing larval quality with unparalleled efficiency. While the finest larvae command premium prices, the inferior specimens are culled, sometimes consumed by the hags themselves, or sold at discounted rates to unsuspecting buyers. Negotiating the price of a larva with its hag proprietor is possible, contingent upon the hag's financial needs and the customer's willingness to offer gold, magical items, information, favors, or even their own soul. Larvae are collected in vast numbers by the hags and their minions, branded with irons, and herded along, using their slime trails to locate more of their kind. Night Hags employ larvae as bargaining chips, trading them with powerful fiends for freedom in the lower planes, or with liches in exchange for the annihilation of their enemies, often potential customers who refuse to trade. The larva trade is intricate and continually expanding due to the ongoing influx of planar inhabitants, centralized in a specific location within the Grey Wastes. While some hags opt to operate independently, The most prominent and enduring establishment is the Grand Larva Emporium of Oinos. Regardless of their alignment, all fiends flock to this emporium for its high-quality larvae, solidifying its status as the commercial hub of the lower plains. Situated conveniently next to the river Styx, the massive bazaar attracts hundreds of passengers ferried by Merenoloths for a day's worth of shopping. Yugoloth mercenaries, equally well-equipped and compensated, swiftly deal with any disruptions to the trade. Night Hags rent spaces from the Emporium's proprietors to bring their entire herds of larvae, while a diverse array of clients haggle over prices and meticulously inspect potential purchases. Larval byproducts manifest in a diverse array of merchandise across the lower plains, including the popular distilled larva beverage, Yellow Worm Stout, and a perfume marketed towards females, aptly named Evil. Many of these items are readily available for purchase at the Emporium. A significant portion of larvae serve as power sources for nefarious spells and dark rituals conducted by entities such as Night Hags, Liches, and Rakshasas, utilizing their life essence as energy. For instance, the creation of an ultraloth necessitates a vast cauldron of Styx water and larvae sealed with wax derived from their slime residue. Upon completion of the process, the larvae dissolve completely, their essence consumed to facilitate the metamorphosis, resulting in an eruption of corrosive larval fluid and the emergence of a new entity. Night Hags also require 100 soul larvae and a month's time to craft a new heartstone if their previous one is destroyed or rendered irretrievable. Larvae are equally likely to be utilized for magical purposes as they are to be consumed as food, resulting in the permanent and total annihilation of the soul's existence. Demons are particularly notorious for their consumption of soul larvae, viewing it as a means to augment their own power within the abyss. Some demons consume larvae immediately upon discovery, while others hoard them for times of need, seeking a significant power boost. Demonic overlords often demand regular tribute of soul larvae from their minions as a form of protection racket, while others willingly offer larvae to curry favor with their lords. For most non-evil beings, destroying even a damned soul is considered distasteful at best and utterly abhorrent at worst, with potential adverse effects for some entities. Additionally, other fiends and certain liches also consume the energy of soul larvae to sustain their undead bodies. Soul larvae are petitioners, characterized by mortal souls ensnared within maggot bodies, rather than being maggot entities themselves. Without them, the lower planes would lack several distinct fiends. The process of promotion varies depending on the type of fiend involved, with some methods remaining unknown. Quasits and imps are created when greater demons and devils twist soul larvae into new forms. Batezus subject soul larvae to lava pools for 11 days of agony before they emerge as lemurs, while demons manipulate the fluid laws of the abyss, often having the lords of woe drain them of negative emotion before transforming the dazed husk into a Tanari through torturous ceremonies. Many soul larvae, if not absorbed into their plane, transform into fiends without external intervention, undergoing metamorphosis based on their surroundings. Hordlings in Hades are believed to result from already obstinately hateful larvae allowing their unique negative emotions to fester, retaining their individuality and twisting into entirely original forms. Larvae within the 9 hells only become lemurs when transformed directly by Batezu, and when left unchecked for long enough, naturally progress into Nubaribos. In the abyss, soul larvae can evolve and adapt to their native lair through tenacity and good fortune, with generations passing in the less hospitable sections before those progressing towards sentience and power assume forms suitable for their environment. This process spawns new demonic life spontaneously in the abyss, though the most wicked tyrants and brutal overlords are known to immediately assume greater forms. Soul larvae are created from the most self-serving mortals who follow neither gods nor archfiends, and they manifest on all the lower planes. Whether in the 9 hells of Baator or the infinite depths of the abyss, their lives are typically a constant struggle for survival against otherworldly conditions, fiendish predators, sentient or otherwise, and against each other. While capable of reproduction, they do not mate and feel no compulsion to breed. On extremely rare occasions, innocent souls can be transformed into soul larvae, such as through a special sacrifice to Demogorgon, where the victim is thrown into the 558th layer of the abyss, known as the Flesh Forges. Those facing the least struggles, primarily out of boredom, typically arrive in one of the glooms of Hades. Even living mortals staying too long on the plane are at risk of transformation. Soul larvae on Oinos rarely appear alone. often doubling in size every few days due to the attraction factor, a phenomenon exploited by night hags who maintain massive herds for extended periods. Even within the lowest layer of Pluton, larvae can be seen squirming in the black dust. They are also known to appear within the similarly dismal Shadowfell, where instead of lying idle, they futilely attempt to escape. Night hags possess the ability to transform mortals on the prime material plane into larvae by targeting those who are already corrupt and tormenting them in their dreams while ethereal before their demise. This process leaves the hag with a particularly potent and malevolent soul larva. Additionally, the Ultraloth Athraxis staff of the lower planes has the power to transform non-night hags into soul larvae upon contact. They are opportunistic eaters, willing to consume anything, including their own kind. Fiends have long mastered the art of twisting larvae into lemurs, manes, and other creatures of the lower planes, recognizing that corrupting mortals provides them with an easy supply of new followers. However, it is known that soul larvae predate the appearance of the first mortals, having existed in Baator before it fell under the control of the Baator. A branding iron for soul larvae, inscribed with a letter from the lower planes alphabet, can be found in the castle New Thomas. This prized possession was obtained by and remains a favorite of the renowned planewalker Mordeia the Great. She acquired it during an audacious heist, where she and her companions disguised themselves as a lich in its court. Confronted by night hags and their mephic servitors, the group seized the iron unnoticed and swiftly escaped from Hades using a cubic gate. The origin of the soul larva is ancient and shrouded in speculation, owing to the propensity for deception and the disregard for history among many denizens of the lower planes. In texts like the Book of Derelict Magics and other Yugoloth historical accounts, it is suggested that an Ultraloth, often presumed to be the general of Gehenna, played an important role in larvae's evolution and transformation into various fiendish forms. Allegedly, this Ultraloth created a purifying jewel known as the Heart of Darkness, designed to strip the Yugoloths of the ethical extremes of law and chaos, channeling them into nearby larvae before dispatching them into the Abyss and Baator, where they would respectively become demons and devils. Some who entertain such narratives speculate that by doing so, the Yugoloths depleted their own life force, rendering them incapable of producing progeny from the larvae and compelling them to rely on mating to replenish their numbers. Conversely, rumors suggest that an Arcadian zoologist from Gehenna once confined soul larvae in a tank where they gradually assume the form of Fartasu Demodond. More outlandish theories propose that night hags are an advanced form of larvae, brimming with so much malice that they transcend hordlings and evolve into even more formidable fiends. Such notions attempt to rationalize their association with larvae and their ability to transform mortals into them, but raise questions as to why they do not transform larvae into hags. From the fortress of Malshim within Nessus, a few rumors have emerged, one of which speaks of apocalyptic destruction. It is said that the Dark Eight are conspiring to initiate an ancient ritual known as the Bringing, purportedly intended to eradicate the Tanari or grant the devils the power to do so themselves. Allegedly, these ceremonies are lengthy and require vast amounts of magical energy, posing a threat to the lives of pit fiends. The ritual supposedly necessitates the sacrifice and simultaneous annihilation of 1 million soul larvae to fuel its power. Whether true or not, the Baator have been engaging in clandestine trade with the night hags at an unprecedented rate. Night hags are sinister witches residing in the lower planes, their nightmarish minds and talents seemingly epitomizing the essence of the hag lineage. They possess the ability to induce terrifying dreams and collect soul larvae. These creatures are monstrously grotesque, surpassing even the typical repulsiveness associated with most hags, and certainly exceeding the appearance of ordinary crones. To merely label them as ugly would be a vast understatement, and any comparison to human females might be considered disrespectful to their gender. Whether appearing sickly and stout, of average stature, or gaunt and skeletal, night hags bear a striking resemblance to diminutive female trolls, complete with a deceptive strength concealed within their decrepit forms and a set of lethal, jet-black talons. Despite their similarity in size and weight to human women, their movements are slow and awkward, owing to the unnatural flexibility of their joints. Their nauseating skin tone gives their entire bodies the appearance of severe bruising, ranging from a pale blue-violet hue to a darkness so intense they appear almost black. They further augment their flesh with scar-like tattoos to accentuate their unsettling nature, although their skin is often already marked by grotesque warts, open sores, and diseased blisters caused by planar afflictions. Like an untamed mane, their pitch-black hair often obscures much of their dreadful countenance and repulsive physique, though this only adds to their terrifying aura. Bones, fingers, and other sinister adornments are frequently entwined within their hair in arrangements chosen to evoke maximum dread. Beneath this shroud of hair lie a pair of fiery, hellish eyes with tiny pupils glowing a furious red, while their jaws extend like menacing hooks from beneath sharply pointed noses. Rows of jagged, yellow fangs, coated in vile saliva, protrude unevenly from their rotting, wrinkled lips. Night hags amalgamate the most detestable characteristics from fiends across the lower planes with the insidious essence of their wicked sisterhood. Inheriting from their hag lineage, they embrace the inclination to sow misery and discontent among mortals everywhere, particularly through the art of negotiation. Like devils, they nurture an unyielding megalomania with relentless ambition, mingled with the insatiable craving for destruction more commonly associated with demons. Yet the unifying theme across their diverse lineage is the sheer delight they derive from corruption. Night hags are perversely subversive, reveling in perverting virtues into vices, whether by magnifying positive traits into unhealthy extremes, or by simply distorting ideals into their antithesis. Corrupting mortals is both their occupation and pleasure, for it not only gratifies them intrinsically, but akin to demons and devils, also grants them ownership of the victim's soul upon demise, a commodity they can later exploit. For those soul-hungry merchants of Hades, no bond is sacred, no tactic too base, and no act too merciless. Balancing a night hag's preference for causing suffering is their passion for knowledge and the necessity to sustain their livelihoods. Driven by the thirst for acquiring new information and blessed with impeccable memories, they serve as highly informative yet exceedingly perilous sources of lost secrets, ancient wisdom, and forbidden lore. Despite their disregard for others' opinions regarding their activities, night hags generally uphold their promises, as tarnishing their reputation, such as being perceived as betrayers or peddlers of inferior goods, would detrimentally affect their business. The most prudent approach to dealing with night hags often involves enticing them with information and offers of arcane power, commodities they value nearly as much as souls. Nevertheless, attempting to negotiate with night hags remains an unfathomably dreadful idea, as they are vengeful manipulators who, upon concluding business, may seek out and transform their weaker clients into larvae. Even worse is the notion of attempting to deceive them, for they are immortal, petty beings, potentially amongst the most stubborn denizens of the Grey Wastes, always seeking retribution, regardless of the perceived slight. Being adept con artists themselves, they are exceptionally challenging to deceive, and upon discovering treachery, they may spend years, or perhaps eternity, devising increasingly intricate schemes to outwit their betrayer. While both insults and altruistic deeds are remembered, they are swifter to repay the former than the latter. Night hags exhibit psychopathic tendencies, categorizing all beings based on their utility. The weak are designated either as food or slaves, with the latter often serving temporarily until they are eventually consumed, while the strong are targeted for subtle extortion until they become weak enough to be reclassified as food or slaves. They harbor no specific loyalty or animosity towards other night hags, and covens are only sporadically formed when one dominant night hag asserts control over her sisters, though such apathy is sometimes attributed to the Grey Wastes. Material hags may occasionally be acknowledged, but are constantly regarded with disdain, subjugated either individually or as part of established covens, but never as equals. Perhaps the sole positive attribute of a night hag lies in their impartiality regarding race or class. They perceive the multiverse as an ongoing power struggle, where the roles of master and servant are in perpetual flux. This perspective prevents them from forming lasting alliances, possibly hindering their further dominion over the lower planes. They consider racial privilege to be a meaningless concept, treating all beings with the same contemptive, predatory malice they display towards everyone else, regardless of their origin or status. Night hags possess an assortment of magical abilities at their disposal, such as casting Ray of Enfeeblement, Sleep, and Magic Missile as innate spells. They also have the capacity to magically discern the alignment of most creatures, detect magic, and polymorph themselves to assume the form of a female member of other races, often appearing as crones. Despite their frail and elderly appearance typical of hags, Night Hags remain formidable in physical strength, unaffected even when they assume alternate forms. Their ghastly mouths can transmit a disease known as demon fever through a bite, and when not polymorphed, they wield wickedly sharp claws. To inflict substantial harm upon Night Hags, weapons must possess enchantments or be crafted from silver or cold iron. They are scarcely affected by extremes of heat or cold. Magic often proves ineffective against them, and they are completely immune to spells designed to charm, frighten, or induce sleep. They typically carry 2 potent magical items at all times, the first being a special periapt known as a heartstone, also referred to as charms of blackness. These lustrous black jewels, worn as amulets, grant Night Hags the ability to enter an ethereal state and cure any disease with a touch, a crucial tool for inhabitants of the plague-ridden plain of Oinos. However, when used by beings aligned with good, heartstones are considerably less effective, shattering after 10 uses and incapable of granting non-Night Hags the ability to traverse the ethereal plane. Crafting a new heartstone requires a month's worth of effort and the sacrifice of several soul larvae, making the retrieval of a lost one of utmost importance to Night Hags. They employ their ethereal state to invade the dreams of those on the material plane. They ride on the backs of their victims, filling their sleeping minds with twisted visions, debilitating anxieties, and nightmarish horrors until dawn breaks. Through this method, Night Hags gradually weaken their prey, both physically and mentally, draining their life force while driving them to madness in the hopes of further corrupting them. Encounters with a Night Hag in this manner only need to last an hour before all the benefits of a night's rest are lost, and powerful restoration magic is typically required to aid victims in recovery. If left unchecked in their mental assaults, Night Hags will persist in tormenting their targets until they perish in their sleep. This is where the Night Hag's other powerful item, the Soul Bag, comes into play. Crafted over the course of a week from the flesh of a sacrificed humanoid, Soul Bags are black sacks capable of holding a single soul claimed by a Night Hag's dream invasion, though only the specific creator can utilize it. Night Hags possess the ability to immediately assess the quality of a soul larva, identifying which souls will transform into larvae upon death, and potentially discerning the specific malicious acts required for a wicked mortal to become one. Armed with this knowledge, they capture the life essence of those they have corrupted in their soul bags before descending into Hades, where the souls undergo a transformation into a particularly potent type of soul larva. However, the process of a dream haunting is not without its flaws, as it only affects sufficiently selfish individuals. The sleep-related abilities of Night Hags reportedly vary in effectiveness on those who are not evil or chaotic, with their sleep-like ability failing to function and their soul bags being unable to trap those souls. Other weaknesses include the use of true sight to detect their presence, protection from evil and good spells, and magic circles to block a Night Hag's intrusion. Techniques that affect the ethereal plane can also disrupt the process. They are exceptionally cruel and cunning, equipped with unique and lethal magical items, along with an array of minions who they are willing to sacrifice to protect themselves if necessary. When they believe they have reasonable chances of success, they swiftly dispatch any good aligned beings they encounter, often using sleep spells to render their victims unconscious before strangling them to death, although some reports suggest they can enter and dismantle their target's mind from within. Allies typically prevent interference from others while they carry out their killings. However, Night Hags rarely employ direct tactics, often assuming different forms to spy on intruders or lure them in before incapacitating all of them. When confronting a Night Hag, it's essential to take every possible precaution, as they are equally vigilant against any threats to themselves. They observe and methodically eliminate enemies, remaining on the ethereal plane if they can move there undetected. They often keep multiple hostages on the ethereal plane, mercilessly executing them to deter pursuers who care about their safety. They may also target spellcasters by ambushing them and seizing them, necessitating spells like Grease or Blur to evade capture. Given their Heartstone's ability to cure poisons and diseases at will, it's no surprise that Night Hags favor traps and guardians armed with such afflictions, often utilizing lower planar diseases. Breaking a Night Hag's Heartstone is an effective tactic in battle, weakening them and preventing them from traversing to other planes without assistance. Alternatively, spells like Force Cage prove immensely valuable in restricting their movements and tactical options, while Etherealness allows for engagement on equal terms. Although they are counted among the most influential economic powers of the lower planes and play a pivotal role in the ecosystem of many indigenous creatures there, Night hags are often regarded as insignificant by extraplanar standards. While they inspire terror among denizens of the prime material, they are relatively weak compared to other planar beings and can be easily overcome by a few mezzoloths. However, they should not be underestimated, as any entity capable of earning respect from Baelors and pit fiends is undoubtedly dangerous. Despite their abilities, questions arise as to why other forces, both good and evil, have not ousted them from Hades and seized control for themselves. Some attribute this to the apathy induced by the Grey Waste, but such claims are unfounded. Night hags reign as the queens of nightmares in Hades, though not through overwhelming power or elaborate schemes, but subtle manipulation. They adeptly pit malevolent factions against each other, using soul larvae as tools of control, while the Oinoloth, the leader of the Yugolos, may hold nominal rule over the Grey Wastes. It is the Night Hags who wield true control, primarily due to the Yugolos' migration to Gehenna and the Oinoloth's preoccupation with internal intrigues. Operating as independent merchants, Night Hags have the autonomy to set their own prices, dealing in various currencies such as gold, information, favors, magic items, evil souls, and whatever else they desire. Through this capitalist manipulation, Night Hags acquire new methods of extortion, gather secrets, and enhance their political influence. In exchange for soul larvae, powerful fiends may be persuaded to refrain from attempting to conquer Hades, while liches can be enlisted to eliminate certain parties that resist participating in the larva trade. The primary occupation and activity of most Night Hags revolves around trading in soul larvae, with the main and simplest method of acquisition being to roam the wastes in search of them. Since soul larvae from the Grey Wastes typically remain stationary, and those from Oinos tend to appear in close proximity to each other, it is exceedingly easy for Night Hags to traverse the gloom and corral larvae together, allowing the horde to multiply over the course of a few days. The particularly malevolent larvae created by hags through their dream-haunting abilities are especially coveted by fiends, as they are believed to bypass the initial stages of transformation into lemurs or manes. Many fiends actively seek out hags known for producing such larvae, recognizing the profit to be gained from their sale. Despite the clear advantages, most Night Hags refrain from this method due to the time and effort involved and the potential risk of attracting unwanted attention from the material plane. However, some opportunistic hags still engage in this practice, targeting powerful beings of great evil, particularly spellcasters associated with fiends, who are capable of producing more valuable larvae. After culling the most inferior larvae and branding their merchandise, they sell the remainder to the highest bidders or through prearranged contracts. They typically trade only the finest specimens, but occasionally offer those of lesser quality at discounted rates, often to inexperienced liches. Despite their reluctance to admit it, both sides of the blood war rely on the keen eyes and strategic location of Night Hags to supply them with the highest quality larvae. Other entities such as liches play minor roles in the larva trade, but still contribute to the market, further bolstering the monopoly held by the Night Hags. With an ever-increasing demand and a seemingly limitless supply, they have undoubtedly amassed staggering levels of wealth. Although rare, interruptions to the larva trade, whether intended to disrupt or seize control of it, have always occurred within the Grey Wastes. The Blood War represents the most significant challenge, as despite efforts to anticipate its movements, Night Hags are often unexpectedly caught in the crossfire of the skirmishes and massacred along with their herds, minions, and patrons. Celestials seeking to undermine the forces of evil without drawing attention to themselves sometimes conduct covert operations against the Nightmare Queens, clandestinely eliminating them and their herds under the belief that striking fiends while they are weakened is the most effective strategy, although the effectiveness of this tactic remains uncertain. On occasion, a rogue fiend or unscrupulous mortal might attempt to enter the larva trade as an entrepreneur, a venture likely to result in their demise before they even secure their first deal, as they are swiftly dispatched by their competitors and never taken seriously. More frequent disruptions include theft by liches, minor pilfering by hungry Dergolos, often overlooked to avoid conflicts with the Yugolos, and assaults by various adventurers traversing the plains. Typically, such intrusions affect individual hags, and the broader larva trade remains largely unaffected. However, failing to address these attacks may lead to a hag being perceived as weak. Hags are open to associating and forming alliances with various evil beings from different planes, and occasionally with non-good entities, as long as they aren't aligned with goodness. Those aware of their existence often perceive them as cunning crones who trade larvae for profit, while celestials resent them for aiding the advancement of the fiendish races. While fiends may view hags favorably for their services, they often regard them as mere merchants. Night hags sometimes enter into marriages with fiends of noble status and may assume seductive forms to extract secrets from mortal wizards. They've been known to establish magic colleges and sponsor arcane research projects, regardless of the moral alignment of the spellcasters they manipulate. Menial tasks, such as record keeping, larva herding, message delivery, and other mundane chores, are typically delegated to lesser creatures, with loyalty being highly valued. Night hags often underpay their workers and dismiss any servitors seeking to terminate their employment in order to safeguard their trade secrets. Imps, tieflings, mephits, and occasionally modrons are among the creatures that may find employment with them. Nightmares, another type of dream-haunting creature native to the Grey Wastes, are often used as mounts, with Couchamar breeds being particularly prized. While night hags interact with servants, customers, and hired mercenaries, their social interactions with each other are minimal, typically characterized by subjugation and mutual disdain for the weak. They generally prefer to operate their businesses independently, allowing them to keep all their earnings without having to deal with equally opportunistic relatives. Hades is populated by thousands of individual night hags, each running their own enterprises and constantly competing with one another. Occasionally, night hag covens can be found in the Grey Wastes, formed to increase profits through collaboration, but they often disband due to internal conflicts. While most hags in Hades are nomadic, driven by their thirst for knowledge to travel across the plains via portals, magical items, or by contracting other beings, only the strongest among them establish layers within the Grey Wastes. These layers serve as minor personal empires for lesser fiends, their offspring, and other nightmarish creatures from various planes. Night hags typically choose strategically located dwellings on the material plane, such as small caves, abandoned mines, forested ruins, or lone crags near secluded towns. Whether through traps surrounding their lairs, stationed minions, or by their own vigilance, night hags are usually alerted to the presence of intruders and respond with hostility. Their lairs exist as dual entities, partly manifesting as haunting presences visible from the material plane, and partly as ominous towers of stone and steel erected in the ethereal plane, constructed using materials sourced from the prime. These formidable towers stand in stark contrast to the ethereal mist, serving as the primary locations where night hags orchestrate villainous schemes and conduct vile rituals. Although they prefer to reside solely in the ethereal plane due to its ease of travel and protection from hunters, the inherent dangers there, such as unpredictable ether cyclones and menacing monsters, make the material plane appear comparatively safer. Often, these layers serve as interplanar prisons for important captives and the offspring of night hags before they undergo full transformation. Despite the evident dangers of such a prison, including various horrors lurking within the ethereal plane, night hags derive sadistic pleasure from leaving their victims confined there. More powerful night hags, known as grandmas or aunties, possess even more terrifying layers, causing the surrounding area to become warped and eerie. Shadows may appear gaunt and animate on their own. Individuals experience visions of deceased loved ones, including themselves, which vanish upon interference, and people may inexplicably vanish and reappear moments later, having briefly traversed to a demi-plane filled with malevolent laughter, shadows, and corpses. Within these layers, such hags wield even greater danger, demonstrating the ability to levitate individuals without physical contact and temporarily banishing others to specialized prison demi-planes. Dream-haunting night hags take pleasure in their kills, carefully selecting victims from the safety of their hideouts. Initially, their targets are often community outcasts such as criminals and deviants. Initially, these deaths may be overlooked or even considered beneficial until notable figures or individuals with undisclosed crimes begin perishing in their sleep. Reflecting the disease-oriented nature of night hags, the deaths they cause are frequently mistaken for a supernatural plague immune to conventional healing methods. Some then attempt to contain the perceived plague by quarantining the affected area, inadvertently trapping the inhabitants within the hag's grasp. When suspicions arise, accurately locating a night hag's lair proves challenging, let alone confronting and defeating the hag herself. Segalune, revered as the mother and goddess of hags, resides within the Grey Wastes alongside the majority of her kind, rumored to be a profoundly powerful night hag herself. She imposes tyrannical commands upon the night hags, demanding the procurement of soul larvae for her trade with the Tanari and liches. However, she refuses to accept the souls of individuals corrupted by other night hags, driven by her own greed and distrust toward her servitors. Despite being both worshipped and reviled by all night hags, Segalune displays a callous disregard for the well-being of her daughters, maintaining dominance through sheer power. The nightmare queens of Hades do not require sleep themselves, although rumors suggest they experience vulnerable periods where they must take precautions and rest. Night hags derive pleasure from consuming both flesh and souls, whether from their own larva herds or from unsuspecting mortals. There are also rumors that they feed on hopes and dreams, a notion that aligns with their existence in the Grey Wastes. While many speculate about the possible connection between night hags and soul larvae, the exact nature of this relationship remains mysterious. Nevertheless, soul larvae are integral to the reproductive process of night hags, who have a uniquely disturbing method of procreation, distinguishing them from other hags. After seducing mortal men, often by assuming guises, night hags undergo a pregnancy period typical for their mate species and give birth to an otherwise ordinary dark-haired daughter. Between her daughter's first birthday and puberty, a night hag has the ability to conduct a series of mysterious and corrupting ceremonies that ultimately transform the child into a night hag. The initial ceremony lasts for a full hour, followed by 3 subsequent rituals spaced 13 days apart. During these visits, the night hag nurses the child and feeds her the flesh of a living soul larva, with each feeding lasting an hour. Upon completion of the final rite, the child undergoes a swift and irreversible transformation into a night hag within an hour. However, if any of these feedings are interrupted, if the night hag fails to visit the child on the designated days, or if the child reaches puberty, the transformation is permanently halted and the child will remain unaffected. There are instances of tieflings in the realms being descended from night hags, displaying traits such as red eyes, bruised blue skin, and horns as indications of their fiendish lineage. This suggests that some trace of fiendish blood may persist in those children who do not undergo a complete conversion to night hags. Hags also have the capability to bear children with fiends, and daughters conceived through this method invariably become hags without inheriting any traits from their fathers. They do not possess maternal instincts or genuine concern for their daughters, often leaving them in the care of others. Typically, night hag offspring are entrusted to unsuspecting, good-aligned individuals, this being one of the rare instances where a night hag refrains from simply killing good creatures, or even to the birth father, who usually has a slim chance of surviving after mating with the hag. Their daughters are often viewed as little more than reserves scattered across the plains to be called upon later if needed, resulting in many hag-born children remaining unchanged. Hags are considered functionally immortal, although it is speculated that if they do age, their lifespan surpasses even that of a dragon. The history of night hags is secured by superstition and folklore, leading to various interpretations of their origins. Some consider them merely to be another variant of hags, alongside sea and green hags, residing on a different plane. Others draw connections between night hags and anise hags, noting similarities in physical characteristics, such as blue skin and black horn nubs, suggesting a possible relation. Earlier accounts even speculated that green hags were the offspring of night hags breeding with mortals, while anise hags are the result of green hags mating with ogres and giants, implying a familial link between the three. There are more esoteric beliefs suggesting that night hags may have originated from soul larvae, or are somehow connected to the nightmarish entities that inhabit the Grey Wastes. Some even propose that they were once native to the Feywild before their descent into extreme evil led to their banishment to Hades, transforming them into fiends. Regardless of their true origins, night hags, particularly those operating in covens, have been attributed with the creation of various horrors. For instance, they are said to have played a role in the creation of the silent Shadowfell creatures known as Banderhobs, as well as the original ritual for crafting bone claws from Ober remains and a trapped Oni soul. There are even rumors suggesting that the night hags were involved in the creation of Yugoloths, working alongside Asmodeus to forge an army not bound by the Nine Hells. However, details of these stories are often muddled by the internal strife common among the night hag covens. Throughout history, various threats have emerged to challenge the night hag monopoly in Hades, posing significant risks to their dominance. There have been instances of attacks by coalitions of liches or incursions of angered paladin orders, which posed considerable challenges to the night hag's control. In the late 15th century, a night hag known as Mad Maggie holds sway as the night hag chieftain, of the Knucklebones gang in Avernus. Despite her outward demeanor, resembling that of a kindly grandmother, Mad Maggie conceals a sinister nature, fixated on the tale of Zariel's descent, driven by a fascination with the corruption of noble souls. Mad Maggie ventured into Avernus, questing for ultimate despair, stumbling upon a fragment of a chronicle detailing Zariel's fall. Consumed by curiosity, she scours the plain relentlessly for additional pieces of the story. Around the year of the three-ship sailing, 1492, Mad Maggie encountered Lulu, the Holophant, who retains fragmented memories encompassing Zariel's tale. The Knucklebones gang is an eclectic assembly featuring fey entities, redcaps, Kenku, a pair of imps, a flame skull, and a fiendish flesh golem named Mickey. The Sown sisters are a trio of Night Hags pledged to a Cerarax cause, who coalesced sometime in the late 15th century. This nefarious coven includes Widow Groat, distinguished by golden coins obscuring her eyes and an infestation of ants within her skull. Peggy Deadbells is adorned with a grisly necklace fashioned from children's teeth and swathed in gnome hide. Her laughter emits a ghastly yellow vapor from her ears, mouth, and nose. Baggy Nana conceals herself with a leather sack sewn on her head, housing a viper, a cockerel, and a terrier within. These creatures serve as her vocal proxies when necessary. Aligned with the Cerarax dark designs, the Hags collaborate to nurture and safeguard the Atropol within the Tomb of the Nine Gods, fostering its ascension into a deity of death enticed by the promise of countless souls. When adventurers draw near the desolate remnants of Omu, the sisters infiltrate their dreams, pilfering blood, hair, or other organic material to craft clones. Subsequently, they subject these duplicates to interrogation before consuming them. In their possession, the Sown sisters maintain Straw Bundle, a scarecrow fashioned from blood and hair, housing the Coven's Hag-Eye. Additionally, they possess 3 dolls containing the spirits of deceased children. Peggy Deadbells possesses a black orb capable of facilitating escape from the tomb's confines. The Sown sisters are among the select few privy to the genuine identity of Mr. Fox, the Arcanoloth entrusted with safeguarding a Cerarax repository of knowledge. In moments of anger, or when he experiences the need to unwind, Mammon transforms himself into his pit fiend form, riding his massive nightmare and leading a hunt accompanied by larger-than-average hellhounds. While devilish deserters are frequent targets, wandering mortals are also fair game for his trophy-taking pursuits. Despite holding the title of one of the Lords of the Nine, he remains a marginalized figure in Hell's political landscape. He lacks allies among his fellow lords, and even Tiamat harbors disdain for him, resenting his recruitment of her dragon worshippers through appeals to their greed. While he was once aligned with Dispater, and thus indirectly with Mephistopheles, it's doubtful he truly ever trusted the Iron Duke. Mammon swiftly ingratiated himself to Asmodeus upon the Overlord's triumph, betraying his former allies without hesitation, earning the suspicion and contempt of every other archdevil. Mammon's relationship with the relatively new archdevil and his former consort Glossia is also intricate. Some claim her position was a punishment imposed by Asmodeus, forcing the pampered princess of Hell to endure Mammon's advances and the dismal conditions of his lair. Others suggest she may have willingly joined Mammon, perhaps out of genuine affection, or simply to provoke the other archdevils, particularly her father, before their relationship ended. Mammon's compliance with Asmodeus' demands and his ambiguous attitude towards Glossia evoke much speculation in Baator. While he may resent her for her perceived manipulation and fear her ascension to Archduchess, he may also desire her submission when he conquers the Nine Hells. Whether they have rekindled their relationship or maintain mutual animosity remains unclear, given the complex nature of infernal romantic dynamics and the convoluted nature of Batazu relationships. Seeking unwavering allegiance from his followers, Mammon surrounds himself with obedient devils. The brutish Barbazus are a common sight, tasked with hauling carts and occasionally trading between the different circles of the Nine Hells in search of souls suitable for transformation into Narzugons. Despite their disdain for Minauros' humidity, Mammon's armies are led by Gelgulons and primarily composed of Ocelots and Hamatulos. The prevalence of Hamatulas in Minauros stems partially from the vast distances petitioners must traverse to harvest stone from the volcanoes, increasing the likelihood of their escape. When prisoners flee, sometimes intentionally released by the Hamatula for sport, Folklore or Mammon personally pursue them if their minions prove incapable of recapturing or killing them. His minions are adept in soul transactions, utilizing a guidebook titled The Accounting and Valuation of All Things to evaluate a soul's worth relative to other commodities, ensuring minimal depletion of his treasury. They strive to emulate Mammon's behavior in hopes of earning his favor, sharing traits of greed. While devils typically view treasure as expendable, his agents may take significant risks to safeguard their gold. Other traits of Mammon that permeate his servants include his indirect and cryptic communication style, opportunistic cunning, unpredictable nature, and adeptness at playing both sides of infernal politics. Those in his service often project an aura of pathetic subservience, evoking disgust from the powerful and inciting fear in the weak. Exploiting their adversaries' hesitancy, they employ groveling and begging to appear harmless, only to strike with unexpected ferocity, showing no mercy to those they themselves pleaded with. Diplomacy is not Mammon's forte. Instead, he excels in the soul trade. Realizing his inability to forge new alliances with the prominent figures of Hell, he doubled down on his expertise. Among the archdevils, Mammon's efforts in soul harvesting always yield the most fruitful results, driven by his vast wealth. As the patron of the greedy and covetous, he attracts materialistic mortals who not only crave wealth, but derive pleasure from depriving others of it, spreading their avarice like a contagious disease. Operating under the principle that money is the root of all evil, he incites the affluent and influential to forsake acts of charity, undermine industries, and bankrupt once thriving nations. In his quest to induce economic collapse, he dispatches countless devils to mortal realms, each tasked with sowing desperation and funneling millions of destabilized souls to Minauros. Like Mammon himself, his followers have mastered the art of manipulating group dynamics by seamlessly shifting between personas. They employ any tactic, no matter how degrading or unpleasant, to achieve their goals, oscillating between ruthless aggression and cowardly retreat at a moment's notice. Devoid of any shame or honor, they resort to lying, cheating, and stealing as necessary. Rarely do they maintain loyalty to supposed allies, often betraying them to further their own agenda and evading personal risk by sacrificing their companions. Such unsavory reputations compel them to lead transient lives of constant travel, avoiding the spread of their infamy. Mammon's influence extends beyond individual con artists to encompass widespread cults. Cultists enriched through illicit means, such as coercion and extortion, infiltrate upper echelons of society and various merchant guilds. Bestowed with supernatural abilities by their patron, his followers excel in theft and deception, manipulating the perception of value and acquiring items from afar. Among his followers are races like Dwergar and Goblinoids, as well as unconventional worshippers like Beholders. Illithids form a significant part of his ranks, with a specialized team of information gatherers among them, as well as a few evil dragons who are considered his favored adherents. Initiation into a cult devoted to Mammon entails betraying one's closest friend for personal gain and participating in a debased ritual as degrading as it is repugnant. Such demands align with the extreme service expected of loyal cultists invited to Mammon's court. Despite the horrifying nature of these requirements, attending to his court promises wealth beyond mortal imagination. Clerics of Mammon, often referred to as coveters, don gold-trimmed red robes and lavish golden adornments. Rogues and bards, particularly those motivated by wealth rather than violence, are occasionally drawn to become his disciples. His temples are extravagantly decorated and ostentatiously adorned with wealth, bordering on the ludicrous. True to his character, the lair and furnishings serve not only as a means of safeguarding the riches, but as manifestations of wealth themselves. From the altars to the sacrificial daggers to the temple's architecture, nearly everything is fashioned from gold and embellished with gemstones. Cultists utilize temples as venues for clandestine dealings, hatching conspiracies and forming commercial agreements that extend beyond the walls. These temples are heavily fortified with wards, traps, and guardians suitable for defending their vast treasures, often employing non-humanoid monsters loyal to Mammon himself. His aspects are prevalent in Faerun, often assuming the guise of Yuan-Ti, propagating and fostering avarice to manipulate mortals more effectively. Disliking sunny climates, they prefer the damp pollution of Minauros and are rarely encountered in natural settings, instead lurking in urban areas such as Gentle Keep, Sembia, and Waterdeep. Despite their combative nature, their greed and self-serving attitude hinder their ability to collaborate effectively with their servants. Part of their insatiable greed stems from the fact that they possess no personal belongings beyond specialized gear assigned to them. All acquired goods are sent directly to Mammon, leaving his aspects with nothing but unfilled desires. Being the first to retreat and surrender to Asmodeus following the catastrophic events of the Reckoning, Mammon suffered a disgrace and punishment despite his attempts to curry favor. His relationship with Glacia came to an end, but his true torment began when he adopted the name Minauros. Asmodeus altered Mammon's natural form, potentially for his own motives or at Mammon's request, symbolizing Mammon's commitment to being a new devil loyal to Asmodeus. The transformation bestowed upon Mammon a likeness to Geryon, the sole archdevil who remained faithful to Asmodeus during the Reckoning. Minauros is garrisoned by Mammon's Gleaming Guard, a unit renowned for their shining armor, crafted from celestial materials corrupted for infernal use. Under the leadership of General Zabos of the Dark Eight, this force is the most well-equipped among Hell's special forces, often deployed when strategic plans necessitate specific magical items. However, the continual sinking of Mammon's capital city has led him to assign valuable fiends to oversee rock-gathering expeditions in the wilderness, resulting in a decline in his contributions to the Blood War. While he is the master of Minauros in name, he often neglects it, leaving such matters to his seneschal Focalor. The Archduke bears a likeness to a slender, bearded human of middle age, exhibiting pale, pink-green skin, feathered wings, and brown cloven hooves. His usual attire consists of flowing robes, and he invariably sports an iron gauntlet in his right hand, a symbol of his authority. Within Minauros, Focalor wields substantial influence, as Mammon shows little concern for matters of security, diplomacy, and governance, preferring instead indulgence in hedonistic pursuits. Focalor, often silent, has proven himself a master strategist, displaying respect and caution in both speech and action, as well as an unwavering commitment to safeguarding the palace and Glacia when she assumed the role of Mammon's consort. Outwardly loyal, he has undergone numerous tests of allegiance, leading many archdevils to recognize Mammon's vulnerability were it not for Focalor's sagacity and the strength of his few allies. In truth, Focalor harbors deep disdain for his master, resenting Mammon's constant neglect of his duty, which he himself must manage. His relationship of Glacia is one of informant and conspirator, as she exploits his bitterness by pledging assistance in Mammon's downfall. However, Focalor has no ambition to assume the role of Archdevil himself. Rather, he clandestinely schemes to maneuver Baal into a position where overthrowing Mammon becomes inevitable, positioning himself as the power behind the throne. He possesses several innate magical abilities, notably the capacity to manipulate flesh and conjure storms akin to a blend of control over wind and lightning. He takes pleasure in swimming, and whenever summoned to the material plane, eagerly seizes any opportunity to indulge in this pastime. Bael is an archdevil duke of the Nine Hells who presently serves under Mammon, the Lord of the Third. Renowned as one of Hell's most adept strategists, he has earned the moniker of the Bronze General due to both the hue of his skin and his numerous military triumphs. However, his path to achieving the status of Archduke has been hindered by his lack of political acumen. Depictions of Bael vary, sometimes portraying him as a toad, cat, male human, or a combination thereof, none of which accurately capture his true form. In reality, Bael's physical form is that of a muscular humanoid, boasting golden skin and towering in height. His countenance resembles that of a bovine creature, featuring a long head, a broad nose, and two small bull horns curving forward. His large, round eyes match the hue of his skin, situated above a formidable mane of red hair. Unlike a typical bull, Bael's wide mouth conceals a set of pointed teeth. His fervor lies solely in the domain of warfare, showing little interest in matters beyond this subject. He possesses an insatiable thirst for battle, his foremost passion always being the command of the legions, yet he transcends mere brutal aggression. He combines his battle capability with exceptional intelligence, wielding a commanding presence capable of leading formidable fiendish armies and devising superior strategies that consistently secure triumph for the Batezu. Nevertheless, Bael harbors ambitions beyond his current station and feels thwarted by his inability to ascend higher within Baator's hierarchy. Though they would refrain from direct criticism, some have labeled him as naive, observing his susceptibility to being outmaneuvered in the political arena. Clever and politically astute adversaries continually hinder his efforts to climb the ranks. Bael possesses true sight, enabling him to discern the corruption and alignment of individuals he gazes upon, unless they are concealed by spells such as undetectable alignment. Additionally, his bite carries a venomous potency that drains the vitality of those unfortunate enough to be bitten. Naturally resilient, he undergoes rapid regeneration from injuries and displays resistance to acid and cold. Although his regeneration can be halted by radiant energy, he also exudes a formidable aura of fear, instilling dread in those around him. Bael commands a range of spell-like abilities, including Charm Person, Inflict Wounds, Invisibility, Shape Change, Teleport, and Windwalk. In combat, he employs Suggestion to draw adversaries into his grasp before unleashing Inflict Wounds upon them. Those who resist may fall prey to his Dominate Monster ability, which he can invoke once or twice daily. He can create a symbol of stunning once per day and has a high success rate summoning between 1 and 6 Barbazu. His personal weapon comprises an enchanted Morning Star boasting a lengthy bronze handle. This infernal weapon possesses the magical ability to extend at the wielder's command, while also inflicting burning and withering effects upon its victims. Although the need for Bael to employ his Morning Star would signal a dire circumstance, he nonetheless charges into battle, wielding it to hammer any adversaries within his considerable reach. Additionally, he dons a suit of full bronze plate armor, fashioned in an ancient style and enchanted to offer enhanced protection to the wearer. Similar to Mammon's other subordinate dukes, Bael governs territories far removed from the central residence of the King of Greed. His domain is situated within the foul marshes of Minauros and encompasses vast expanses of volcanic ridges and desolate, lifeless woodlands, positioned between the uplands of the lair and the swamplands where prisoners are held. During this tumultuous period marked by the decline of numerous archdevils, Mammon has managed to retain his position without being usurped, partly credited to Bael's martial abilities. The Viscount relies heavily on the strategic insight of the Bronze General to safeguard his holdings. However, unbeknownst to Mammon, Bael actively schemes to seize control of Mammon's lair for himself. Recognizing his potential value on the front lines of Avarice, both the warlord Bel and certain members of the Dark Eight acknowledge his capability to ascend to the rank of Archduke. Some even argue that he would be a more legitimate successor to Malagard than Glacia. Yet Bael chose to remain a vassal to Mammon, resigned to languish in the shadow of a less deserving fiend due to his political ineptitude. There are those who endeavor to elevate Bael's status within the hierarchy, including Focalor, Mammon's seneschal, and leader of one of the 3 primary factions opposing the paranoid and treacherous Lord of Avarice. Focalor harbors resentment towards his slothful master for shirking responsibilities and burdening him with them. However, rather than seeking the Archduke's power for himself, Focalor collaborates with Glois, Mammon's new consort, poised to replace Glacia, to engineer a scenario where Bael is compelled to overthrow Mammon, thereby allowing Focalor to wield influence behind the throne and manipulate Bael to further his own agenda. While some individuals are willing to aid Bael in his aspiration, a larger faction seeks to exploit or discredit him, including Mammon's subordinate commanders, Carcrinolas and Melkon. Carcrinolas, overseeing 36 companies of Barbazu, has adopted a patient approach, preferring to await opportune moments for his own advancement while remaining aware of Bael's ambitions without actively supporting or exposing them. Melkon, in charge of 18 companies of Arignes, harbors jealousy towards his more powerful counterparts, concealing his envy while eagerly anticipating any setbacks for Focalor or Mammon. These 2 schemers lead the Third Court faction, which harbors animosity towards Bael and seeks his demise, aiming to seize his forces and employ them in a plot to overthrow Mammon. Unbeknownst to them, such actions would in fact align with Glacia's interests, though her ultimate objectives remain unclear. Bael commands the largest contingent of troops in Minauros, leading 66 companies, totaling over 20,000 Barbazu, all with exceptional tactical skill. Like many of Hell's Dukes, he refrains from entering in battles he is uncertain of winning, instead allowing his legions to engage on his behalf. He derives satisfaction from sparring those he defeats, as he prefers to convert adversaries into servants. Those who pledge their allegiance and souls to him become bound to his service, presented with the choice of corruption over death, a proposition extended to nearly all entities, with the notable exception of demons. The Bronze General also welcomes mortals capable of providing him with political advantage, recruiting such individuals and relying on their representation in Mammon's court while he pursues his own interests. Despite, or perhaps because of his limited interests beyond warfare, Baal maintains a small following of cultists. His devotees, instead of Asmodeus, hail him as the king of hell, with the most fervent diabolists believing in him to be the master of all devils and infernal powers. Certain occultists and mystical texts, such as the Book of Fire, assert that he bestowed the invisibility spell upon mortals, although this claim is of diabolical origin and vehemently denied by magical scholars and arcane practitioners. Throughout the ages of the Blood War, numerous opportunities for power and prestige have arisen within the Nine Hells. Baal has capitalized on many of these chances and earned renown and respect for these accomplishments. Sigirsa serves as a current governor under Mammon's rule in Minauros, embodying a bloated and corpulent form as an archdevil from the Paeliryon caste. Remaining a faithful vassal and at one time a paramour of Mammon, Sigirsa also reigns as queen over the city of Jangling Hiter. Additionally, Mammon has a daughter, Baelzra, conceived not with Glacia or Gwa, but through an affair with the bloated archdevil Sigirsa. Despite being the offspring of Mammon and a former Paeliryon, Baelzra lacks the expected deformities, yet her inner grotesqueness exceeds that of even her father. Her clandestine operation of soul harvesting on Avarice has yielded secret soul profits for the King of Greed, who continues to lavish attention on her despite her exile. Paeliryons, also identified as corruption devils, are grotesque and cunning inhabitants of the Nine Hells, adept at coercing mortals into selling their souls through blackmail. Their skill in acquiring mortal souls, often at a low cost, aligns with their role as infernal spy masters. Twisted versions of the female form, Paeliryons are massive in height and possess a corpulence, mainly due to their distended bellies hanging below their waists. Their warty skin, a blend of pink and green, contrasts with the black robes they typically wear. Despite their considerable size, they can fly clumsily thanks to the heavy, bat-like wings on their backs. Their formidable nails, always emitting a vibrant red sheen, can extend rapidly. A Paeliryon's appearance is an unsettling mockery of traditional beauty. Bone ridges adorn their broad heads, and their faces, riddled with boils, are heavily adorned with courtesans' makeup, including layers of rouge on their cheeks and shiny red lips outlining their wide, fang-filled mouths. Their wide, yellow eyes, often likened to those of pigs or reptiles, are typically shaded with blue eyeshadow. Their facial adornment serves as a parody of humanity, a mask designed to mock its fragility and inefficacy. Interestingly, the most potent among corruption devils, often termed as sires of corruption, are smaller in size and lack the capability of flight. Beneath the repulsive exterior and imposing stature of a Paeliryon lies a sharp and imaginative intellect inclined towards manipulation rather than outright violence. Paeliryons possess the ability to swiftly entangle the already complex web of Baator's politics into a bewildering labyrinth of deceit and treachery, all while honoring their agreements. Serving as both architects of corruption and discerning assessors of competence, Paeliryons view all beings as instruments to advance their nefarious schemes. They surround themselves with expendable minions and flatterers while orchestrating the actions of their more hazardous and unpredictable assets from a distance. As hedonistic as they are grotesque, corruption devils indulge in repulsive acts of excess when not overseeing subordinate devils or tormenting damned souls. Proficient in coercion, Paeliryons can effortlessly unleash torrents of insulting invective of unparalleled severity. The most formidable corruption devils are often the most morally reprehensible, harboring disdain for individuals of exceptional moral integrity and frequently scheming for their downfall. The hefty bodies of Paeliryons hinder their foot speed, yet they compensate by tunneling underground swiftly. Despite their bulk, they soar at remarkable speeds or hover with their wings. The retractable claws of a Paeliryon not only tear into flesh, but also twist and corrupt minds upon impact. Their insults possess such potency that they can manipulate the minds of listeners, turning enemies against one another or immobilizing them outright. They possess the gift of tongues, understanding and speaking all languages, and can unleash potent curses and magical commands. Mastery in illusionary and divinatory magic allows them to surveil enemies while concealing their own dark deeds. If needed, they wield formidable spells such as Anti-Life Shell and Meteor Storm. They can summon various Batezu, including Lemurs, Oceluths, Barbazus, Erinyes, Hornigons, and Geligons. Through special contracts, they can even summon corrupted mortals. They typically avoid solitary encounters, preferring the company of lackeys like Cornigons, Barbazus, and Spinagons. In battles, they strategically position minions and traps to create barriers between themselves and their adversaries. Their potent perfume, coupled with magical cloaks and braces, serve as additional defenses against enemies. During combat, they swiftly activate defensive spells like Anti-Life Shell or Hold Monster to ward off threats. Prioritizing spellcasters and ranged attackers who can breach their defenses, they can engage in melee foes from above using their sharp claws. When facing multiple opponents, Paelyryons distribute their attacks among several targets, while also employing their minions to screen and curse their foes tactically. As the situation in battle starts to worsen for a Paeliryon, they redirect their insults from their foes to their allies, inciting them into a frenzied state. If a corruption devil feels genuinely threatened or finds their allies defeated, they quickly try to negotiate with their enemies, even if it's just to stall for time. They always have escape plans ready in case their attackers pose a real danger, and if they can't find a new advantage, they'll take flight to seek immediate revenge. Although native to the Nine Hells, they maintain secret hideouts across the lower planes. Many of them serve Glacia, comprising the nobility of her court and enjoying her favor along with the Erinyes. However, most Paelyryons work under the Archdevil Paetor, carrying his will throughout Dis. Their frequent conspiracies fuel Mammon's already heightened paranoia, which is why they are so scarce on Minauros. Corruption devils often hold official positions of authority, managing territories for soul harvesting, overseeing cities and courts within Hell, and ranking just below pit fiends within the infernal hierarchy. Their hideouts are concealed in secret locations accessible only through magic, such as being concealed beneath forgotten alleyways deeply embedded within the hearts of infernal cities. There, they dwell in extravagant comfort, feasting on both flesh and soul, bathing in basins of water contaminated by their own waste, and grooming themselves before vast mirrors. Their chambers are frequently adorned with peculiar objects and treasures, including globes, fabrics, chess sets, sculptures, and cages used for tormenting their captive victims. Paelyryons possess vast wealth, often in the shape of gold and precious stones, which they use for bribery and manipulation purposes. In contrast to imps, who entice mortal souls with promises of power, Paelyryons excel in the manipulation of illicit information. By weaving intricate webs of diabolical intrigue and maintaining a network of secrets, they coerce and blackmail mortals who are vulnerable to such knowledge, persuading them to trade their souls for relatively small gains. Survivors of dealings with Paelyryons are exceedingly rare, as they seldom reveal their involvement directly to their pawns on the material plane, preferring to operate through intermediaries. Paelyryons only intervene personally if a situation goes awry and requires their direct intervention. While mortals are the primary targets, the influence of corruption devils extends across the outer planes and beyond. No one, from insignificant Spinagons to powerful pit fiends and even archdevils, is immune to their prying ears. Paelyryons also spy on each other when not convening to exchange information. They are willing to collaborate with a variety of entities, although most fiends remain unaware of the true identities of their Paeliryon overlords. Corruption sires pose a significantly greater threat than typical corruption devils, as their nefarious schemes often extend beyond individual targets. Transforming a town into a breeding ground for villainy and deceit is a simple objective for a corruption sire who may have grander ambitions, such as the downfall of the entire empire. To achieve their wicked goals, corruption sires manipulate mortals into signing magical contracts that transform them into monstrous creatures under the control of the Paeliryon. These contracts invariably contain hidden loopholes or ambiguous language designed to trap the unsuspecting mortal. Once signed or agreed upon verbally, the terms of the pact are inscribed onto the signer's flesh, sealing their transformation. Although not all corrupted followers are directly created by Paelyryons, it is the most common method by which they come into existence, and many corruption devils amass vast retinues of such servants. Corrupted souls typically originate from humanoids who have fully immersed themselves in a particular vice, which could include lust, gluttony, greed, laziness, anger, or cowardice. Corruption devils observe these individuals from the shadows, studying their weaknesses and devising ways to manipulate them until they reach a point of despair. Once the victim's vice has led them into a dire situation, the corruption devil can intervene with a tempting solution or irresistible offer. Corruption is most prevalent in societies where repression is common, spreading like a contagion and fostering a community of like-minded individuals who reinforce each other's wickedness. Although usually under the influence of a corruption devil, corrupted souls are subservient entities willing to obey anyone who permits their indulgence in sinful behavior, either mortals or demons. Victims retain only fragments of their former lives, and the only means of restoration is for the mortal to overcome their vice and for the corrupting contract to be nullified. The devils dwelling in Minauros endure discomfort, if not outright harm, from the plains' hailstorms. However, the native higher-ranking devils have acquired sufficient skill to navigate through the storms on foot or in flight with ease. Devils in the service of Mammon often emulate his behavior by issuing orders in the form of riddles, and their schemes are intricate to match. They employ simpering, exploitation, and subversion to excel in the power dynamics of infernal society. They appear pathetic and groveling to the powerful, yet ruthless and merciless to the weak, so long as they maintain dominance. They specialize in soul-based transactions, although they are astounded by the low prices at which many mortals sell their souls. Devils in Minauros experience the highest rate of promotion among all circles of the 9 hells, but also suffer from an exceedingly high rate of demotion. Their lord is notably vindictive, quick to cast down his servants for the slightest offense, resulting in a constant cycle of seeking his favor and then facing banishment. To manage this flux, a ready supply of least devils serves as a talent pool, with lemurs, spinagons, and demoted nipperibos being particularly common in the swamp. Among the common devil types in Minauros are barbazus, amatulas, excruciarchs, and Kytons, although imps, merregons, and cambions are also reliably present. Narzugons are actively sought out for Mammon's retinue to fulfill his need for unwavering loyalty, leading his bearded devils to often trade for souls suitable for such a transformation. Abishai and Ocelus are somewhat uncommon, but still found in Minauros. Erinyes are infrequent, while Cornigons, Amnesu, and Pit Fiends are even rarer, along with Paeliryons due to their conspiratorial tendencies, which exacerbate Mammon's paranoia. Most notably absent are Gelugons, finding the swampy dampness of Minauros outright inhospitable, although they still lead Mammon's army of Ocelus and Hamatulas. Narzugons, alternatively recognized as Hell Knights, possess formidable strength as Batezu and serve as the elite cavalry of the 9 hells, traversing across the plains on missions assigned by their infernal overlords. Their preferred mounts and sole companions are the terrifying stallions referred to as nightmares. Among scholars in the mortal realm, there exists confusion regarding the infernal hierarchy of Narzugons. Some designate them as minor devils, while others categorize them as major devils. The wizard Mordenkainen even suggests they hold a comparable status to the mighty Gelugons. Narzugons are eerie gray beings that tower over a normal humanoid and sport meticulously crafted spiked plate armor, adorned with souvenirs from their conquests. Pennants affixed to their standard lances flutter independently of the wind. Each Narzugon appears nearly indistinguishable from the next, their eyes reflecting profound sorrow. The prevailing demeanor of a Narzugon is one of anger, harboring disdain for everything, their infernal masters, mortals, themselves, and even their own immortality. This anger is fueled in part by the realization that their actions are evidently wrong, or at least distasteful, yet they are duty-bound to carry them out. This sense of honor and obligation sets Narzugons apart from other devils, as they prioritize action and courage over cunning and manipulation. Tales circulate of Narzugons offering their adversaries a chance to surrender or reclaim their weapon if disarmed. While their fury stems from an acknowledgement of their wicked deeds, their torment arises from the recognition that their supposed morality as mortals was a facade. Despite their personal turmoil, Hell Knights adhere strictly to every command and exhibit unwavering discipline in their conduct and demeanor. Merely locking eyes with an unmasked Narzugon can unleash a creature's deepest fears. Prolonged eye contact might induce hallucinations that gradually overshadow reality, akin to the effects of a phantasmal killer spell. Their very voices have the power to instill terror in adversaries and bolster the resolve of allies. Furthermore, they possess heightened perception when encountering entities aligned with good. Narzugons possess a repertoire of innate spells. Once daily, they can unleash spells like Order's Wrath and Unholy Blight. At will, they can deploy spells such as Desecrate, Doom, Hold Person, Produce Flame, and Suggestion. Additionally, once per day, they can endeavor to summon other Batezu, such as Erinyes or another Narzugon. Hell Knights are seldom seen without their nightmare mounts, creatures captured, tamed, and bound to serve the Narzugon with infernal gear. When engaging in battle, they ensure the welfare of their mounts, refraining from needless sacrifice. In dire situations where their steeds face serious jeopardy, most Narzugons opt for retreat, often utilizing their etherealness ability to escape. Mounted on their steeds, Narzugons scour the battlefield, seeking weaknesses in enemy defenses before selecting a target and charging. Initiating combat with a commanding charge, they direct their mounts to unleash one of their special abilities, a devastating attack they always seek to employ. Beyond charging, they employ various tactics to utilize their mounts' abilities, such as leveraging their greater maneuverability, executing ride-by attacks, and shifting ethereal to infiltrate their enemies' ranks. Following the completion of a Hell Knight's charge, their nightmares often transform into a noxious cloud of smoke, leaving their adversaries gasping for breath and providing the Narzugon an opportunity to regroup for a second assault. Upon the Narzugon's command, a nightmare can restrain its smoke ability, allowing the Hell Knight to personally slay their enemy. Against ranged adversaries, Narzugons unleash torrents of flames at their targets while endeavoring to close the distance from melee combat. In moments of uncertainty regarding the battle's trajectory, they remove their helmets, inducing nightmarish hallucinations in their foes. When operating within legions, Hell Knights march in flawless synchronization, leading to devastating charges against their enemies. Conversely, when dismounted, they position themselves near strategic choke points to impede enemy movement. While a select few Narzugons practice horseback archery, the majority focus on honing their skills in mounted combat. Though Narzugons carry an assortment of weapons, their most formidable armaments are lances forged in hellfire. These hellfire lances possess not only lethal capabilities, but also possess the ability to send the soul of any creature slain by them directly to Styx, where it will be reborn as a lemur. This process is nearly irreversible, except through swift resurrection or the use of immensely potent combinations of spells like Wish and True Resurrection. Unlike conventional weapons, hellfire lances are unique to their wielders, bearing distinct marks for both the Narzugon and their master. Hell Knights are the distinguished cavalry of Baator and execute the directives of their masters across the infernal circles, resembling twisted iterations of knight errants. They are renowned for their loyalty and reliability, an exceedingly rare trait in the Nine Hells, and are frequently entrusted with critical missions demanding swift action or enduring solutions on other planes. While some act as messengers, envoys, and champions for greater devils, pairs of Narzugons are often dispatched to the Prime Material to hunt down escaped prisoners and rogue devils who have eluded Hell's grasp. Their diverse responsibilities may include retrieving lost malevolent artifacts, demolishing sanctuaries of good, leading nefarious cults, or spearheading infernal legions akin to the endeavors of adventurers. When integrated into infernal armies, Narzugons commonly serve as standard bearers. However, when assembled into vast squadrons, they transform into formidable cavalry legions. Certain Narzugons are affiliated with the military unit known as the Order of the Nightmare, named after their iconic mounts. Their straightforward nature renders them invaluable assets to the arsenal of devil leaders, as they prefer to acquire treasure and magic items for conquest and pillaging rather than as rewards for service. Particularly esteemed by the archdevils of Hell, who greatly value obedient champions, Narzugons pledge allegiance to a specific lord until death. The majority align with Asmodeus, who endeavors to monopolize their allegiance, preventing other devils from acquiring knights of their own. Nevertheless, not all Hell Knights serve Asmodeus directly, and every archdevil, duke, and minor baron commands at least a few Narzugons under their banner. Hell Knights rarely mingle with other denizens of Hell, unless specifically ordered to do so by their superiors. Typically, their sole companions during their nefarious missions on the material plane are their trusted nightmare mounts. Attempting to coerce a nightmare into service usually results in the creature's resentment, but the profound bond of loyalty between master and mount signifies a Narzugon and a nightmare as genuine partners in wickedness. A Hell Knight's primary ally is their mount, traditionally a nightmare, although they have the option to choose alternative steeds. In Cania, Narzugon elites often utilize mammoths, while in Avernus, Hell Knights known as Ash Riders patrol the skies atop wyverns. Additionally, they are capable of riding greater barghests, fiendish direboars, and chimeras. The most esteemed Hell Knight champions are even known to claim evil dragons as their mounts. Numerous legends abound concerning the origin of Hell Knights. One prevalent belief suggests that the initial Narzugons were once followers of the enigmatic deity whom Asmodeus himself served, a figure known as He Who Was. Asmodeus allegedly deceived these servants of the deity, leading them to betray their master, thus condemning them to eternal servitude under Asmodeus before he subsequently vanquished his former lord. Merregons, also referred to as Legion Devils, serve as the foot soldiers in the legions of the Nine Hells. They are commonly found in devil armies, demonstrating strict adherence to infernal laws and lacking any hidden agendas. Some scholars classify Legion devils as among the lesser Patezu, while others, like the wizard Mordenkainen, regard them as minor devils. Mordenkainen places them on par with bearded devils in terms of rank, though differing opinions exist regarding their hierarchical position. According to Mordenkainen, Merregons lack the ability to vocalize and possess one-to-one telepathic communication. Their organized formations can be disrupted by eliminating their commanding officer. Legion devils are the height of a typical tall humanoid and slightly heavier. They possess humanoid features with deep red skin, sharp teeth, and although recent accounts suggest they may have no discernible facial features, their visages are concealed beneath iron masks that cannot be removed. Typically, they are equipped with a variety of armaments, including plate mail, longswords, shield, studded leather armor, mail coifs, and longbows. Their right arms typically wield weapons, while their left forearms are swollen and adorned with iron, featuring a small, vestigial hand dangling from the limb. All Merregons share identical appearances, distinguished only by the metal masks affixed to their faces, which denote their commanding officer and assigned lair within the Nine Hells. Like most devils, they are characterized by cruelty, pitilessness, and rigorous discipline under their master's authority. They embody order, displaying unwavering loyalty to their superiors, disregarding their own well-being, and exhibiting a complete absence of individuality and initiative. Their existence revolves around serving their masters and adhering unquestioningly to the infernal hierarchy. They act without hesitation and do not retreat unless explicitly ordered to do so. However, their unwavering dedication comes with notable shortcomings, such as a strictly literal interpretation of commands, a prudish and dull-witted demeanor, and a high degree of predictability in the absence of external intervention. The bond among Merregons exists beyond mere coordination. It is a peculiar magical link connecting each member of the group. This connection allows them to share vitality, enabling an individual to continue fighting long after it would have otherwise succumbed. However, injuring one Legion devil weakens the entire group, and a significant blow to one could potentially bring down an entire Legion. This vulnerability can be exploited by forcibly separating a Legionnaire from its squadron. Those distanced far enough may regain a small portion of their shared power, but if an insufficient amount remains, the isolated soldier might perish. When grouped together, they form a sort of hive mind, akin to their shared vitality, which represents both advantages and disadvantages. Attempts to manipulate their minds through magic affect the entire squadron rather than just the targeted individual. Therefore, if any member manages to resist the effect, all benefit from the success. However, if they cannot resist the effect, then all will succumb to it, making a single overpowering spell sufficient to defeat an entire Legion. Additionally, they possess the capability to teleport to any other Legion devil within a radius, and they can also call upon another Legion devil for assistance. Despite lacking individual capability, they function within foot soldier units to overpower their adversaries. When separated from their Legion, a solitary Merregon typically seeks out their fellow legionaries before engaging enemies, retreating and requesting assistance if confronted with hostility. However, when united, they utilize their collective abilities as a peculiar group consciousness and their training in coordinated combat to transcend their usual physical and mental limitations, displaying a tactical adaptability and cunning previously unseen. They prefer to move in close-knit formations to bolster their group combat skills and employ short-range teleportation to flank or reposition themselves. Despite the futility of certain situations, any casualties within their ranks are disregarded. As beings devoid of nuance and specialized in obedience, they often benefit from having a leader to direct their actions, otherwise they can easily become disoriented. Legion devils hold varying statuses within their battalions. The lowest rank is occupied by grunts, followed by Hellguards, veterans, and finally Legionnaires, who are the most formidable among Legion devils. Higher-ranking Merregons exhibit greater perceptiveness, superior armor, intelligence, and agility compared to their counterparts. Only the most exceptional among them can ascend to officer positions within the armies of the Nine Hells. Legion devil officers typically undergo training as warriors, although clerics, wizards, and sorcerers are prevalent among their ranks. Hundreds of Merregons stand watch over citadels, fortresses, and the private domains of various devils, forming the steadfast backbone of numerous defensive units. Countless regiments patrol the Nine Hells, whether stationed in their sprawling barracks amidst the ashen wastelands of Avernus or traversing the deep chasms of Nessus. Whether on the offensive or defensive, They may spend several days journeying from their encampments to the battlefield. In smaller numbers, they can be found on the material plane, safeguarding temples of evil or pillaging the territories of the vulnerable. Groups consisting of 2 to 4 individuals often serve as the protectors and warriors of malevolent wizards or dark clerics, while squads of 8 can decimate mortal battalions. Exceptionally wicked overlords and tyrants may command 1 or more legions of 64 Merregons, forming small personal armies to serve their nefarious agendas. Similar to mortals, Legion Devils require a barracks, training facilities, and other resources to engage in battle effectively. Each day follows a regimented routine of guard duty, weapons training, tactical analysis, camp upkeep, patrols, and other duties. They adhere strictly to their schedules without deviation, unless external circumstances alter the nature of their tasks. Despite often carrying coins, they have no use for currency due to their lack of individual motivation. This peculiarity arises from Hell's intricate and seemingly impractical regulations, which mandate that their masters provide them with wages they cannot spend, ensuring that no individual Duke of Hell can amass a legion of Merregons powerful enough to threaten their personal rivals. They originate from the souls of soldiers, mercenaries, and bodyguards who serve malevolent masters without hesitation. The majority of them receive the eternal status of a Legion Devil as a reward for their ruthless loyalty. Their masks cannot be removed without first killing the devil wearing it. Wretched creatures known as Stitched Devils are created by Night Hags. While their origins may trace back to parts of Baator, these hags from Hades craft a devil of distinct nature by sewing together disparate pieces. Renounced by their original kin, they endure torment considered cruel even by many devils, enslaved to the whims of their creators. Typically, they measure approximately twice the height of a normal humanoid and weigh about 3 times that. Each one is distinctly unique. These creatures are patchwork amalgamations, assembled from various infernal flesh pieces, assembled by the whims of the Night Hags. Their forms are chaotic blends of devilish limbs, possibly even faces, all bound together by threads resembling sinew. From the moment of their inception, Stitched Devils endure ceaseless agony, afflicted by the disjointedness of their composite forms and tormented by the sinew binding their disparate hides. Despite ample reason to resent their creators for bestowing upon them this twisted existence, Stitched Devils possess dim intellects. They are no longer the beings they once were, now possessing independent personalities and motivations separate from their original constituent parts, unaware that they should harbor any animosity towards their masters. Instead, they exhibit intense loyalty towards them, relinquishing most of the treasures they uncover to their mistresses and obediently carrying out their commands while fawning over them in hopes of garnering some form of affection. They plead for mercy, clinging to the futile hope of escaping their plight to attain freedom or significance, or alternatively, the release of death. False promises whispered by the Night Hags themselves entice their creations, offering relief to manipulate them into despicable acts. Stitched Devils channel their own torment into sadistic desires, harboring a propensity to inflict pain upon others and reveling in malicious glee when causing suffering. Surrounded by auras of torment, they emit waves of agony that intensify the suffering of those within a radius around them. The potency of this pain aura can be fully resisted by individuals with sufficient fortitude, and if successfully resisted, the aura cannot affect that individual for a day. The simultaneous presence of multiple pain auras in the same vicinity only marginally amplifies the anguish, with devils as well as other lawful evil extraplanar entities and Night Hags remaining entirely immune. Possessing various spell-like abilities, they can freely employ greater teleportation. Once daily, they can dispel magic, instill terror in their foes with phantasmal killer, and conjure a greasy cloud infused with profane power through unholy blight. Although not Baator themselves, they share numerous resistances with them. Their multiple limbs afford them swift and fierce attacks, while also enabling them to effortlessly traverse inclined surfaces. Their combat maneuvers typically involve employing phantasmal killer against the adversary they perceive as the most formidable, followed by a reckless charge into close combat. Despite possessing unholy blight, they do not always discern the moral character of their targets and will assume hostility when surrounded by enemies, paying little heed to the risk of ensnaring vile allies in the fray. They seldom resort to dispelling magic unless confronted by a foe whose evident supernatural defenses impede their assaults, or if specifically instructed to do so. Utilizing teleportation to secure advantageous positions in battle, they will often coordinate with their allies to encircle their opponents, ensuring that the pain auras converge before launching frenzied attacks, tooth and claw. They serve various roles for the Night Hags, functioning as hunters, guards, soldiers, and gladiators. Typically, a single Night Hag maintains a retinue of 2 or 4 stitched devils, with this number being influenced by personal wealth and status. They utilize resources such as money or souls to acquire the necessary materials for their creation. Devils with preferences for specific types of souls may barter substantial quantities of fiendish flesh for the petitioners that a Night Hag can provide. Amnesus are known to engage in such transactions, while Kokrakons are particularly adept at trading parts of their victims for lost souls, even if only to secure more intriguing subjects. When a devil meets its demise, its essence typically returns to the hells, where it is eventually recycled to spawn new fiends in Baator's breeding pits. Despite existing outside of any natural ecological system, devils remain integral to the cosmic order, operating in accordance with the laws of the multiverse. However, while the Baatezu are notorious for their adeptness at maintaining these laws to their advantage, thereby enhancing their status within the infernal hierarchy, Stitched Devils exist in a realm distinct from the Hell's intricate systems. The Stitched Devils in Faerun conform to the standard for their kind across the multiverse. The Red Wizard Alabrast Rue acquired the creation technique by capturing and subsequently eliminating a Night Hag, thereafter bartering the knowledge to other Night Hags in exchange for a continuous supply of extraplanar materials. With these planar resources, he succeeded in crafting 6 Stitched Devils, deploying them as guardians for his concealed sanctuary in Sephirzar. From this stronghold, he harbors ambitions of ascending to the position of Tharkion of Delhimide. The Baatezu of Minauros scour the lair for beings to enslave and put to work. Normal petitioners, as well as captured intruders, are kept in shallow pits. Prisoners are chained to stone pillars, enduring the cold until death, or being taken away for other nefarious purposes, such as slave labor or conscription into the blood war. Survivors learn to seek protection and support from the rocks, standing on elevated bones to keep their heads above water even while sleeping. The need for guards to maintain order in Minauros explains the prevalence of Hamatulahs. Perched atop the stones, they are willing to burn or scald captives with a precise use of produced flame. They transport captives to the prisons and actively track down escapees. Occasionally, if Mammon's lieutenants are occupied, they may allow prisoners to escape on purpose, only to hunt them down for sport later. For matters beyond their capability, they call upon lieutenants like Focalor or even Mammon himself to intervene. Despite the vigilance of Hamatulahs and their efforts to prevent it, escapes do occur in Minauros. Consequently, there are several communities of runaways who have banded together to resist the fiends. These makeshift cities, comprised of ramshackle hovels, serve as refuges against the devils, although they remain vulnerable to destruction without organized escapes from the hells. Despite the devil's awareness of these cities, they do not immediately move to destroy them, perhaps due to witnessing countless similar communities being raised over the millennia. The souls of the damned, even those destined for other realms of torment, typically arrive in Minauros first. Initially, they undergo processing in Jangling Hiter, enduring torture to prepare them to become lemurs. Other archdukes often delegate this task to the City of Chains and its factory-like flaying facilities. Once stripped of personhood and deemed ready for transformation, the souls are transported to the sinking city in tumbrils for redistribution and sale by Mammon and his greater devils. Mammon also oversees the creation of soul coins, the primary form of infernal currency, in vast chambers using the spirits of the wicked. Despite the myriad dangers and challenges involved, there are still evil mortals and wayward fiends who willingly come to Minauros, often exhibiting greater madness and depravity than their chosen masters. Citizenship in Minauros can be obtained by proving one's usefulness to Mammon, with many of these interlopers serving as soul trade functionaries. Even the devils themselves harbor fears of the lurking dangers within Minauros, both from venturing too far from their cities and in some instances from delving too deeply within the lair. Fiery hellstinger scorpions are a common presence, but rumors persist of a hive of mosquito-like insects whose seekers never return, as well as reports of monstrous spiders known as hell chain weavers, which terrify even the Kytons. Beneath the murky waters of the swamps and bogs, nameless creatures roam, yet none are willing to brave the depths to uncover what truly lies beneath the surface. Legendary among the monsters feared by devils in the plain is the immense Worm of Minauros, a bizarre creature resembling a purple worm with ivory plates and a crested head reminiscent of the gnarled skull of an archdevil. This creature perpetually haunts the hinterlands of Minauros, always returning when slain, existing solely to punish wayward or unsuspecting devils and attacking mortals only in self-defense. Non-lawful evil mortals who openly offer themselves to it and survive being swallowed and expelled are granted enhanced abilities for a month, although maintaining this power requires them to embrace increasingly lawful evil tendencies. It targets lawful evil individuals by scent, seeking to damn them through its lethal attacks. The sinking effect of Minauros has persisted for as long as mortal memory and knowledge can recall. Mammon himself despoiled vast expanses of his own lair to construct his sinking city. Clausia's ascension to Archduchess of her own lair around 1353 prompted Mammon to take action beyond Baator. Operating on the belief that money is the root of all evil, Mammon spurred the devils of Minauros into a frenzied campaign of economic warfare against unsuspecting centers of good on the material plane. By collapsing the economies of prosperous nations, he aimed to induce such despair and desperation that millions of souls would be driven to corruption and damnation in the process. During this period, Mammon's cities experienced an eerie depopulation as all his devils were tirelessly engaged in sabotaging industries, undermining charitable works, and otherwise destabilizing major nations in the material plane. Minauros and its ruler Mammon reflect the logical consequence of unchecked greed. The oppressive landscape, with its endless swamps and decaying architecture, are the result of a profoundly miserly and greedy ruler who consumes everything for its own sake. Every aspect of the lair, from its treacherous terrain to the ceaseless misery of its inhabitants, mirrors the inevitable downfall brought about by the insatiable desire for more. While a motivation for wealth has prompted many works of good throughout Faerun, Minauros represents what this desire can become if corrupted and taken to its logical extreme, reflected in the very multiverse of the Forgotten Realms.